This podcast may contain language not appropriate for children.
So, don't give off any motherly stares.
Oh no!
Yeah, don't hit us with a withering glance, as it were.
It's so funny because when she does that, without getting too much into this right now, I keep thinking of the gold, silver, and crystal animation for the move Leah, which kind of looks like the meme that Ace sent us.
You're like, hey, let's not talk about that immediately.
You guys are coming through very crisp for me because I have, this is my first recording with some brand spanking new headphones.
Oh, nice.
Huzzah.
It's a bit of a story behind these headphones. Because basically, I was having a bit of a night out, as one does, although I don't do this very often. I got a little more wavy than I expected. A bit more white girl wasted, as it were.
Okay.
And I lost my headphones in a pub. In a pub that I'm 90% sure I saw Keir Starmer in, but I'm still not sure.
Oh yeah, that was a story. The fucking leader of the Labour Party. And you didn't throw a brick at him.
Oh my god.
I wanted to finish my pork belly, because it was a really nice pork belly roast, before getting kicked out of the pub, and then by the time I finished it, he was gone. So, there. But anyway, to get on with the story, I got back to the house, and because I was wasted, I thought to myself, I'll buy some new headphones, and didn't think to myself, maybe I could just go to the pub and ask if they had them.
Plot twist, he has the headphones now.
And Keir has them.
Just tweet out after this recording, Keir Starmer has stolen my headphones, and people will be like, what?
So then I look up, I'm like, so is Beats by Dre actually meant to be good? I always see they're really expensive, and, the people I'm there with, I'm like, yeah, no, they're meant to be pretty good quality. And so I try to order some, but then, and I blame a certain manga by this, I order the wrong headphones. Instead, I order Bose. The reason I blame a manga is because there's a manga called Bose Beats, which sounds like both headphones, so it mentally connects them. So in my alcohol adult states, I order the wrong headphones. They're still good, but they're just not the ones I meant to order.
The connections our mind makes.
Yeah. I have the tools to listen to some buttery biscuit beats now, so it's all good.
Listen to those buttery biscuit beats, Nightcore, Trap Remix, whatever additions they like to add on YouTube.
Yeah, my pokey girl and my pokey.
All right.
This song. I know a certain someone who will be very happy by mentioning this song, but let's not waste too much time because it's time to raid the city. Knock it out, my loyal evil tusks. Welcome to Podcastmon Adventures. We are a retrospective podcast aiming to discuss the Pokémon Adventures manga, aka Pokémon Special, arc by arc. I'm Wensleydale Cheddar, they, them, and who do I have here with me?
Owen with an H, he, him.
Henry Kathman, he, him.
And last time on our little book club, we discussed the Yellow arc, focusing on our head-aware non-conforming manga original protagonist, Yellow, clashing against the eco-fascist Elite Four.
Yes.
And what are we chatting about today, Henry?
We are going to be delving into the Gold, Silver, Crystal arc that was a bit of a long one. Let's see, the original Gold, Silver arc originally published in December of 1999 and went for 3 years until December of 2002, and with over 90 rounds that have been published. And listener, if you thought the Yellow arc was a long one, oh boy.
It's so funny. So we kind of thought about perhaps splitting this arc into 2 different sections, but there's not even a neat split. The gold and silver part ends like...
When Crystal comes in, yeah, you could divide it that way, except this is an interesting arc for a whole lot of reasons.
So as our resident newbie, Hoven, why don't you give us a brief summary of our story?
So first of all, as mentioned, it was published across December 99 to December 2002, across 7 volumes and a bit. Story is by Hidenori Kusaka. Art for volumes 8 and 9 is by Mato, and for volumes 10 onwards, it is illustrated by Satoshi Yamamoto. The English localization Pokémon Adventures is translated by Kaori Inoue. The lettering is still credited to Wayne Truman on the omnibus I have, but We are pretty sure Ace Christman did a lot of this. If what he told us is accurate, it's unclear.
He told us that he was working from the Yellow Arc onwards, so I don't know, Viz. Why'd you do that?
Yeah, not sure what's going on there. The original series miscellaneous text adaptation by Ben Costa. The design by Sean D. Williams and Sam Elsway. The editors are William Flanagan and Annette Roman. The collector's edition production artist is Christy Medellin. The collector's edition design is Julia J.R. Robinson, and the collector's edition editor is Joel Enos. And I guess with that all clarified, let's get into the synopsis. So, sometime following the showdown with the Elite Four, a new Dex holder sets off across the Johto region. Certified little stinker Gold tasks himself with tracking down one of Professor Elm's Pokédexes and Pokémon, as they have been stolen by a quiet, stoic boy named Silver. All the while, your usual grab bag of strange goings-on permeates the region. 3 legendary beast Pokémon hunt down gym leaders and notable trainers, seemingly attacking them out of nowhere. A masked man looks to revive Team Rocket with newfound Phantom of the Opera merchandise.
Oh, no.
The Pokémon storage system is down, and nobody knows why. Our main characters are suddenly replaced for 2 volumes by Crystal, a gung-ho Pokémon capturer. And it all comes together in a clash of regions, as the Kanto and Johto gym leaders face off in exhibition matches at the Indigo Plateau, with hopes of unearthing the mysterious masked man's identity. All your faves are here. Splash pages of Dex holders, legendary Pokémon, gym leaders, non-legendary Pokemon, censored corporal punishment. The works.
Don't forget the kidnapping. They got all the child kidnapping.
So much kidnapping.
That masked man, he's fixating on some of the Dex holders because they're 10 years old.
It's kidnapping. Is this kind of like Chai Tea or DC Comics?
Oh my god.
See, Hoven, I thought that you were going to do another musical number with Suddenly Suicune is here to provide you.
It's right here. Stroll down the route. Size up your rivals. Here, take my new Dex. Track that beastie today. City approaches, clean as the morning. Jumped from behind now, you're shocked and dismayed. Suddenly Suicune is leaping towards you. Pokeballs are worthless, your team HP is low. Suddenly Suicune will use gust and thwart you. Constantly traveling. Suicune's your foe.
Dang.
Amazing. And
Brilliant.
I'm sorry, I just know you too well. The first part of this arc is very different to when Crystal comes in. It seems like Kusaka really be like, let me get all of those game plot beats out of the way so I can actually write the story I want, isn't he? Like, it's in one fell swoop that you get the entry into Goldenrod City, the radio tower, Whitney, Mary, the cycling shop, Sudowoodo. It's all done at the same time. The space isn't lightning. It's a fucking megavolt.
Yeah, I find that interesting too, especially when you consider that this was being done in concurrency with the release of Pokemon Crystal. And I wonder how many of the long-term plot decisions were made because they knew that they were going to be doing this spin-off thing with the extra features with Pokemon Crystal.
It's really hard to call that a spin-off since it's like all part of the same story. It's basically 2 stories branching in and interacting at the end, or like in one delta of a river.
Yeah, it's like 2 concurrent stories that eventually meet together, which it definitely gives expansion in scale to a lot of the stuff that we had seen. Like, something that we had remarked upon with the Yellow Arc is how Kusaka has this knack for depicting like this sort of worldwide stakes that could be seen throughout the Pokemon world. And that's something that can be also seen, especially as we check in on all 16 gym leaders as well as the previous Dex holders. And it's interesting to see that kind of interplay between some of these characters and stuff.
I guess to go into my general thoughts, it kind of seems like the ebb and flow of the Yellow Arc is just sort of this manga's formula.
Yep.
This hot minute of, oh, wait, what's going on here in the early volumes before everything comes together and resolves in the latter phase. In Yellow, that question phase, it takes the form of this sort of open mystery surrounding its titular protagonist. And in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, it's a little plot turn I like to call the Crystal Pivot. I'll go into my details on that a bit later, but for now, the arc as a whole, you have Gold, Silver, and Crystal very much picking up the baton from Yellow, and follows on from the trends of that stretch. This, this twisting, turning mystery surrounding the larger plot and the villains, the reappearance and displacement of characters new and old alike. Yellow gave more of a proactive role to the gym leaders from the Red, Green, and the Blue arc, and this takes that even further, giving us perspective chapters from, as you said, gym leaders from both Kanto and Johto. And some of the new Dex holders haven't even met these gym leaders. I suppose since we're looking to deviate from the traditional gym challenge structure, it's an interesting move. Why should we constantly be tethered to the new Dex wielders?
Yeah.
It's assumed that most readers have some sort of reference point, either the games or the anime, so why not just leap into the adventures of the new gym leaders? Between them, the side characters like the professors and Bill, and all of these cumulative Dex holders, it really does make the arc feel like an ensemble piece. If I were to levy one criticism at this arc, it's that perhaps there are a few too many plates spinning at once. Kusaka likes to jump around between plot threads in a way that's both constant and oddly irregular, which means there's a lot to keep up with at any given point.
That's true, although I do think that that's one of the problems that you can sometimes encounter with a long-form serialized story, where if you have this expectation of releasing a new manga every other couple of weeks, you can easily develop these different threads, and it can be pretty easy to decide, oh, I want to add this little bit in this story, I'll use this volume. So I think for us, reading this thing as a singular piece, that is definitely there. Although I do wonder how it would play for the people that were experiencing this on the ground. I do agree, it can get a little bit unwieldy, especially near the end point.
I do like how the gym leaders and the bits of the regions that we've missed during the Gold and Silver part get proper introductions when Crystal comes around, and especially we can test everyone in battle. And meanwhile, Chris gets into a three-way chase after the Water Legendary together with Eugene and Team Rocket, which is quite fun. Then we have the sort of evenly split into three parts, although the Crystal part kind of dominates the story. The third part is, of course, the tournament arc between the Kanto and the Johto gym leaders, and the aim is to figure out the identity of the masked man, the secretive new leader of the reborn Team Rocket. And I don't know, perhaps it's the utter familiarity that I have with these characters, given how much I've played the games, which I think is in a big part of how everyone will manage with these little introductions and with these moments, and not having to do a lot of build-up to those characters, especially since it's a game adaptation. So the build-up is so much extra to the tournament than it needs to be, with the 16 leaders arriving in the middle of the stadium by the newly launched magnet train, and they're all introduced in a massive wordless 2-page spread.
Giant 2-page spread, and then the last panel of that volume with the giant shattered glass kind of motif.
Yes.
You know that kids will absolutely lose their shit at that chapter, though. That's the thing, a major trait of Johto is that it really does feel like a continuation of Kanto. The region, it still follows the simple grassy plains as a biome. A lot of the Gen 1 Pokémon return. They share the same league. In the games, you have the Kanto post-game, you have the Red Battle and all that, so it does really feel fitting for the Gen 2 arc of the manga to match that and encompass the casts of both regions.
It's interesting with Gold and Silver, because this is that point where Pokemon has gone viral and has become this giant cultural juggernaut, but I don't know, it still feels a little bit scrappy. When I think about Gold and Silver, an impression that I get is that there's that feeling of, oh man, are we going to be able to make this thing happen a second time with this game? And the fact that there are all of these weird elements to Gold and Silver as a game. Johto just has such an interesting vibe to me as a region, with all the ruins and all the elements of technology or stuff with the red Gyarados, that you don't see some of that stuff as often, or at least they don't have as much novelty in some of the newer games, in my opinion. But I think that feels really appropriate that there's that element of continuity in this arc.
Yeah, it's definitely the case that Kusaka also wanted to adapt those two regions together, because the game had them together as the initial post-game challenge after the Pokemon League in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. I want to talk a bit about the art. So this is usually around the time when we mention this. So this arc reaches the point where the series swaps the artist from Mato to Satoshi Yamamoto. And in the last arc, I definitely saw more of a reliance on the chibi designs than red, green, and blue.
Yeah, I really saw that in the early volumes of this one as well.
They really definitely dominate even the action scenes, and I'm hesitant to say anything definitive about Mato's injury, but I did notice a significant drop in the quality in the first part of this. Like, I'm not even talking about the simplified designs, because that's a stylistic choice. That's fine, that's great. But there are some things that are definitely not deliberate. Like, in the Bellsprout Tower battle between Gold and Silver, their expressions are just not all there. There are panels when Gold is meant to look angry or determined, but he just looks bored.
Yeah, I feel a lot of sympathy for Mato, because you can tell, especially near the tail end of their run with Volume 9, you can see some of the places where that blocking and that posing and stuff is still really good, but you can tell that there's a lot of corner cutting to make their work a little bit easier, which it's sad that the manga industry is structured in a way where they have to do that, because I do genuinely miss some of the artistic style. The way that they draw Cyndaquil and Gold's team during the initial parts of this arc, I just love that style so much. And no disrespect to Satoshi Yamamoto, but I remember when I was reading it growing up and seeing that when the art changed around when Crystal showed up, I was kind of like, wait a second, what? This looks different.
Yeah, I was going to get into that actually, because I have a bit of a tinfoil hat theory regarding the Crystal Pivot. I guess to clarify, it's when suddenly Gold and Silver are defeated, and we suddenly start up with Crystal, and Gold and Silver are basically not mentioned for 2 volumes, so you're like, what? What's going on?
Yeah.
So I think in essence, it's at least in part a storytelling compromise. I'm sure, having to bring in a new artist is likely something that really threw a spanner in the works for the team, and maintaining the same lead characters with a new art style could prove really disorienting for readers. Especially Japanese readers who aren't used to this sort of thing. I know I had this when Ultimate Spider-Man switched out Mark Bagley as the series' pencil artist of many, many years for a new one. So, by starting us out with a new lead character, while initially only bringing back side characters like Bill and Oak, it's quite a good way to make this transition process a bit smoother, because Crystal is unknown to us, so we don't have a visual preconception about how she's meant to be drawn. So this means that Yamamoto is given a bit of a buffer period as they work out the kinks of making their artwork a bit more in line with Mato's. So by the time we reintroduce the likes of Yellow and Gold and Crystal into the story, the designs look a lot more in line with how the prior artist drew them.
It definitely worked for me, because at first I did not register the change in artists at all. But I do love Mato's early arc, but no disrespect to Yamamoto either, because I really love the color spreads at the beginning of the Collector's Edition Volume 4. The Sabrina and Bugsy look really pretty, and the Raichu has this cute long snout that is just very charming.
Yeah, because in those early-ish spreads that you see, Mato just makes all their Pokemon so pudgy. And even Silver's Ursaring with their kind of like big claws and stuff, they look threatening still, but they just render them in such a approachable, friendly quality that I really enjoy. I will say, the very last chapter of Mato's art, which depicts Red and Blue's little battle where Red is trying to become the Viridian City gym leader, there's some really good panels in here of Mato's art here. Like, when Blue comes in with his Caesar and he's just doing this Sonic the Hedgehog ass-looking pose.
Leaning against the wall.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Blue comes in with a mischievous grin.
I'm just saying, 12-year-old me thought that was the coolest shit ever, because I thought Caesar is obviously the coolest bug Pokemon out there, and the way that Caesar's just kneeling down like they're about to drop the sickest diss track ever, it's just neat. All this to say that, to give some praise to Yamamoto's art as well, it's not like they don't also have that sort of cute stylistic quality. Something that the Pokemon Adventures series still retains is this sort of propensity for making a lot of these Pokemon more individualized. Like, the fact that Crystal's team all has that little star motif to them is a really nice touch, as well as the way that some of the gym leaders' Pokemon have their own little flourishes. I'm just thinking about the Gyarados with Misty and how they end up drawing that. There's a lot of really cool artistic moments throughout all this series, and I think even though it was an adjustment for young Henry, it was one that I was able to still get on board with.
Yeah.
I did love all the multiple action shots in the climax, the giant battles with all the participants.
Oh yeah, no, this thing is spread city. Like, Yamamoto is just like, all right, you want me to just do another 2-page spread? Great, bet. All right, regardless of what the thing is, oh, the original Kanto Pokedex holders, yep, give them a spread. Oh, the Johto leaders are standing next to each other? All right, give them a spread. Suicune's doing anything. Give that a spread. Lots of good spread art in here, which comic spreads can sometimes have a problem of being a little bit difficult to follow composition-wise, but Yamamoto does have a pretty clear eye, especially with being able to maintain a lot of good focus. My favorite example of this is when Gold, Silver, and Crystal are together, and all three of their Pokemon evolve at the same time. There's really good blocking at the top level of their reaction shots. There's Lugia, and then the evolution panels, and then we see Feraligatr, Typhlosion, and Meganium holding up the rock, similar to the way that it's almost as if they are holding up the panel, which, hey Yamamoto, gold star, that's some good composition.
Yeah.
Metaphorically reinforcing the point in the narrative through your blocking. Love to see it.
Yeah, I'm quite a fan of both Mato Yamamoto and the artwork and the composition. And you're quite right that all the spreads are very clear, which, given that I'm used to so much of My Hero Academia and its very chaotic nonsense in the action scenes, I do appreciate that greatly.
We are not going Frank Miller on these spreads. They are very easy to...
We're doing comparisons to popular shonen. It is kind of interesting to me that the main trio of this early 2000s launched parts somewhat resemble Team 7 from Naruto in some ways. You have the rambunctious, crafty doofus of a main character. You have the more level-headed girl character of the group. The style is very focused on her athleticism. And then you have the stoic, I want to do it myself, rival to the doofus.
Who would Rock Lee be in this scenario? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That's a good question.
I feel like Faulkner. This is just gut vibes, but like...
Is the Rock Lee the most cop? I don't know.
That is true! That's true! And Faulkner starts out as a cop!
No, Sai's the most cop. No?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he also flies on his drawings usually, so that makes sense. Before we move on to the characters, I want to talk about the themes a bit. So I don't think this series is too dissimilar from Yellow, since it's also very interested in building up its legacy. I love details like the framed picture of the old guard featuring Oak, Agatha, the Dacre couple, and Kurt, and fuck Professor Rowan, I guess.
He doesn't exist yet.
Well, no, Professor Rowan's like a baby. Well, oh wait, yeah. I headcanon that Rowan is the kind of Pokemon professor that is just knee-deep in the stacks at whatever library. This is the kind of dude that would refuse to surface unless he has to give a dissertation, and is just being routinely told, hey, Rowan, the library's closed. No, this manuscript. I need to finish reading it.
I bet he's the friend they don't mention. He still thinks that they are good friends, but they all forgot about him. I like the neat tying up characters together, like the Dacre couple are very clearly Elm's parents or grandparents or something. They also must be Jasmine's relatives, I think. I forget if they are.
Yeah.
And yeah, due to all that, so what's also important is the theme of nostalgia and like the past in general, which brings us to the Mask of Ice.
Yeah. To bounce on your theme of nostalgia, I would say trauma is an extension of that theme, because you see a facet of that element of fixating on the past is a thing where the conflict lies in so many characters having difficulty moving on in different ways, and some of it being inflicted upon people, some of it being through their own poor choices and feeling those regrets. And it's really interesting to see that certain characters like Green, they're able to iterate upon some of the mysteries that they kind of established. And I do wonder how Kusaka went about kind of planning this out, because I imagine that near the tail end of the Yellow arc, they realized, oh, yeah, they're developing this gold game, so they probably had this idea of being able to plan out more long-form conflicts with the characters. But the fact that they were able to tie in Green's conflict with the revelation of her and Silver and their whole deal, it felt like a very natural kind of revelation to have, which it's very impressive for a kind of serialized story like this.
They did it so early on too, like in the Green versus Sabrina battle, where it was clearly the Burnt and Tin Tower there.
One thematic link I got was between Gold and Winston, in that both of them are very motivated by partnership with their Pokemon.
Winston, or do you mean Price?
Price, yes.
Oh, I see what you did, because we were once on a One Piece RP forum, and there was an NPC called Winston, who was a big-time pirate, one of the old guard as well, and like,
God,
we used Price's Sprite for that.
Yes.
Just out all of the secrets. But yeah, no, I agree. I think we'll get into Price's whole deal a little bit later, but I was going to say, I do like that whole element of partnership with Gold as well, because it is very interesting to see. They were 2 years into publishing this manga, and the fact that they're already thinking about the different ways that people could express their relationship with Pokemon. With Blue, a problem was he was viewing them as tools, but in here's that added theme of partnership that feels like a natural extension to some of the themes of nature versus humanity that we saw in Yellow, of being able to peacefully coexist. And I think that's a neat little echo of stuff with Yellow, but a very different kind of character as a result.
Yeah, it's a great point that the previous arc asked the questions of, can Pokemon and humans meaningfully coexist? And Gold is kind of like the immediate answer to that. And at the same time, you're quite right about the parallels with Price, because they're both, in the end, kind of selfish characters, but Gold doesn't isolate himself from all the people he can treat selfishly, but still has a relationship with. He's quite well known in his own town as well, whereas Price is basically, my family is all that matters to me, and fuck you got mine to everyone else.
I mean, also, Gold is a child, so I think there's also that element to that point of nostalgia. A theme I also got was that sort of intergenerational kind of conflict, which, you know, it's not as clean-cut in real life, but that kind of feeling of the older people are refusing to hand over some of their power, they're holding it on to themselves, and instead of ushering in the next generation, they're wanting to seek their own ends. I don't know about you. I can't think of any real-world parallels to that, though.
I want to talk through the climax of the series a little bit.
Which one? There are like 50
Yes.
in this
I
arc.
do have to gush over how cool that is. First, we get 16 gym leaders clashing in a tournament, but then Neo Team Rocket invades. But then the 3 legendary beasts finally choose the trainers in the form of Misty, Blaine, and Surge, and they clash against Mask of Ice, who has enslaved Ho-Oh and Lugia. Blaine manages to heal himself, but only by breaking the bond between him and Mewtwo. Misty entrusts Suicune to Crystal and acknowledges that she's always going to be the one to pass her Pokemon to someone more suitable, which is honestly such a bittersweet moment. And then Mask of Ice makes Kurt craft a GS ball for him to rule over Celebi and thus time itself. Everyone joins forces in Ilex Forest, like Red and Blue finally reuniting, Green and Silver confronting the past and battling against Price's elite disciples, Yellow gaining the resolve to reveal her identity and discovering the secret behind her straw hat, and finally, Gold discovering his secret talent as he dives into the time vortex after Price to witness the nostalgic delusion he has trapped himself in. The pace felt just perfect to me. I just wanted to keep reading, and the only thing stopping me was the arc being so long. Every plot beat to me felt so important. Every relationship between the characters just falling perfectly into place. Everything felt like it made so much sense thematically and emotionally.
Also, just Bill's big moment where he completely loses his composure and is like, what's the point of having this technology if it can't connect people and can't help them? There's another great moment in all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on that point with the pacing, a testament to the writing of this climax is the fact that there is that degree of escalation, which something we talked about was how there was that kind of escalation in the yellow and the red arc that felt a little bit sudden and stuff. Whereas this, there's such a gradual and naturalistic progression to these events that even though we start off with shenanigans with a rat-a-tat in a river and end in a vortex of time, it feels like the fact that they've paced this out so well makes that kind of escalation all the more compelling.
That's true. In Red, Green, and Blue, there's so many climaxes following one another in not a very consistent way, and in this, the ante is amped every time.
It kind of feels like a best of both worlds of the first and second arcs climaxes, how it plays out.
Everything felt like it made so much sense thematically and emotionally, and I do have to say, it with this caveat emotionally, as once again the villain's plan and motivation felt badly constructed.
Yeah!
I actively have to ignore it to keep enjoying this. This is where we're getting to my bewilderment moment of the episode. So Price had Ho kidnap talented children to make them do research on time. What? Why? What the fuck does that mean? What did he expect?
Well, you know, those youngins, they have more of it because they're younger, so yeah.
They have more time, so do research on time, 5-year-old? I mean, what did he expect Green and Silver would do? It's such a shallow mooring spot on such an otherwise emotionally satisfying arc, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Like I said, part of the theme of this is that there's that inability to let go and stuff, and I think something that you could, maybe if they explain like the time stuff more, that would make things make more sense. But to me, I've kind of read Price as this inability to move on from the past. And the fact that, yes, he's sad about his past losses, but the fact that he's also so fixated on his glory days. That's something that I've read as someone who had this high point and he's trying to get back to that. So many people try to get back to that point, but it's kind of impossible and illogical. So you could read that his whole plan is just a testament to the ways that people will irrationally try to do whatever it takes to get back to this point in the past. You know, because, I mean, let's be real. I feel like there are some people around today that would not be above using children for time magic if it meant that they could get back to whatever pre-lapsarian point in their life that they would want to go to.
Yeah. That's a great point that he's willing to sacrifice everything like rich white boomers can in the real world otherwise. That's a great point. All in all, this manages a very good job emotionally drawing you into the characters because the characters are still very charismatic, just like in the last arc, despite all the manga's faults in logical conclusions to the motivations. So yeah, it does a very good job emotionally drawing you into this, but then it kind of slaps you in the face with its nonsense stemming from poor planning. And Crystal's mum is a very good metaphor for what the writing in the series is like sometimes, because she also says something very emotionally poignant, but then slaps her daughter in the face, and she clearly needed Planned Parenthood since she wasn't emotionally mature to be a parent. Anyway.
Yeah. So, for starters, to push back on certain sentiments, I'm not sure Crystal did deserve that slap. She approached a Pokemon that had been known to attack strong trainers, and realised that there's a bit more to what it's going for than just attacking people, and immediately is like, oh, fuck, what do I do? Am I doing the right thing? What do I do? And, you know, quite an understandable crisis of conscience. Then, even with the slap censored out, it's a very overly harsh, mean-spirited way of dragging her out of it that doesn't really match up with the degree of the perceived screw-up. Crystal's mum just feels very underdeveloped as a character, and while I don't want to defend wholesale similar moments of tough love, like, say, Kamina from Gurren Lagann punching some sense into Simone, or certain parental figures in a variety of shonen softly lionizing their physical punishments, at least there's often a clear, brash, often foolish disposition to contextualize said behavior with these sorts of characters. Whereas Crystal's mum, we just have no time to get to know her, so this is all we have.
I think also the fact that the manga does a good job at illustrating the stakes of certain things, but it's like, hey, Crystal's mom, it's just catching Pokemon. We don't need to go this hard about it. It almost gives me this weird pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of vibe with her, where she's like, you have a job to do. If someone compensates you for a job, you do it. you are a pro. You need to act like it. And it kind of reads as like, oh, I get that you might be having these emotional doubts and stuff, but you should really get back on that Sigma grind set, Crystal.
Oh my god.
Like, have you ever considered just winning? Have you considered just adding another side hustle?
It's not like Crystal even wanted to be in a slump. That's what gets me. Like, she herself said that she needs to pull herself together somehow. And first of all, the kids get slapped around by different adults in this manga. It's kind of a false dichotomy here. The framing is way different. One is a parent physically disciplining her child. It feels intimate, real, and it feels like domestic abuse portrayed as admirable discipline and strict parenting. And the other is part and parcel of a children's action series. It's an actual adventure. Of course, the bad guys are going to punch the kid main characters.
Yeah. No disrespect to Ace with their reading of it, but I find it interesting, especially because Crystal's mom has this very juvenile looking exterior. I don't know what is going on with this 2001 ass scene looking Hatsune Miku cosplay. The fact that in literally 2 pages before that glare, she's hopping up and down like a schoolgirl and doting on her Pokemon and talking about, oh, they're so cute and all that.
I guess it's supposed to be a bait and switch, like I don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah. Crystal's mom is presented as very childish and immature, and then she drops the hard truth, the adult lesson, on her seemingly more mature daughter.
It's funny, because one, how sort of OC-ish her mum's design is, played into something quite funny for me. Oh my god. Because the thing is, the OG Gen 2 games are a bit of a blind spot for me, games-wise. So I initially assumed that Crystal was just an OC, like yellow or green. And then I looked up the game characters and I'm like, oh, right, she is based on the actual game character.
Wow, you didn't know. Oh, cool.
No, like I said, I've not played Gen 2, I've only played the remake.
The thing is that Gold's mom does look pretty much like the game version of the character. Like, I get that her whole thing is she's kind of like a Pokemon otaku kind of thing, you know? She's dressed in bright colored kind of thing, and it's definitely something that's like, yep, this is definitely something drawn from 2002 Japan right now.
Yeah, way to help an entire generation of kids be afraid of showing any signs of weakness to the parents. Oh boy!
Ooh, yeah. When you get glared so hard, Arcanine just has to close his eyes.
To go into this as an adaptation of the game, it follows on for a lot of the strengths of prior parts, where a lot of the battles play off this sort of puzzle box, where the enemy presents some sort of challenge or fighting style or technique, and it's sort of this like, okay, what Pokemon move can we slot in used in which particular way to counter it? It's very creative with that. In terms of building up the things that are very distinctive to Gold, Silver, and Crystal, it's cool to have an arc that emphasizes the legendary hunting aspects of the games, as it really comes into focus here with the 3 beasts.
Yeah, and I think Crystal as a character is a really interesting illustration of the ways that they showcase that mechanic in the game. I remember playing my Pokemon Pearl game and similarly feeling Crystal after Mesprit would transport as soon as I encountered them in the wild again. That frustration of doing everything to try and catch that Pokemon, and then
off it goes.
Nope. 3 shakes, they're still bursting. Freaking Dusk Ball with confusion, paralysis, just everything on there, and still not good enough.
Try being fucking Chugga Conroy with his Gen 4 Let's Play where he tried to get everything in a Pokeball. I liked how it worked in Trading to Evolve as a thing to showcase. Gold has a Pokemon that takes on an alternate path from one of Red's. So he has the Poliwhirl, who ends up turning into Politoed instead. And then also you have the trading with...
Also, yeah, Seadra into Kingdra on Silver's part at the same time.
And then even one of Red's team, the Eevee he saved, has the newly introduced Espeon. It's a cool way to mark the region onto one of the legacy characters' team.
I think also it's a good moment to help differentiate Gold from Red, because even though out the gate they establish Gold as a very different kind of trainer than Red, considering there's that degree of similarity in their designs and vibes between Gens 1 and 2, it's a pretty interesting illustration of how Gold is going to be taking a different path. And it feels very appropriate, too, because Politoed is seen as this more goofy, technical kind of Pokemon versus Poliwrath, which is more focused on their prowess and stuff like that.
I especially like the amount of spotlight to different forms here, because Red already had Poliwhirl for a very long time, and here Polibow spends the majority of the time as a Poliwag.
An adorable Poliwag, too.
And then just briefly evolves into Poliwhirl, just only to turn into Politoed immediately.
I guess they didn't want to spend too much time on a shared team member. I also find it interesting, like, you compare, initially it seems like the dynamic between Gold and Silver is going to be really similar to Blue and Red, but you get a lot of subtleties to it in that Silver turns out to be a lot less mature than he initially seems.
Yeah.
And even Gold is often a lot more intuitive than he seems as well. Even though he's more outwardly a bit of a hothead goofball, he notices lots of little things, like he immediately picks up on that Silver's motivations might not be as dubious as he thinks, and kind of thinks about, okay, how does the starter that I'm with feel about that? Or he immediately clues into the fact that, the reason that Politoed isn't following my direction anymore is because we traded it. Can I have him back, please?
And with this, we're transitioning into the character discussion, I suppose.
Yeah, well, to bounce off of that thing with Gold's thing, about him being very intuitive, something that I also find very interesting is the means in which he goes about getting the Pokedex, because right out the gate with these first couple of chapters, I feel like there's a little bit of a bait and switch, because you could initially get the impression that Gold is kind of like a retread, because, he comes in already similar to how Red showed up in the first chapter of this person having difficulty getting a Pokemon. He's like, oh, nice to meet you, Joey. Check me out, I'm such a rad Pokemon trainer, before meeting the professor. But the thing that showcases the way he differentiates, they make Gold a little bit more of like a delinquent with the pool and the skateboarding, he's got that attitude, bro.
Yeah, as I said, he's like the Joseph Joestar to Red's Jonathan Joestar.
Yeah, but then the fact that Oak initially rejects him, and the fact that that has a visible effect on him, where he initially takes Oak's rejection of the Pokedex, like the fact that it visibly angers him, and he initially tries to get that approval by doing the kind of stuff that Red would have done, where I'm going to try and train harder and stuff like that. Except Oak kind of has his own mini arc of realizing, hey, I was unfair to Gold because I'm putting this expectation of him to be kind of like Red, sort of building up that theme of legacy, where he realizes to be a Pokedex holder, it shouldn't be about having this sort of narrow criteria of, oh, they're a particularly good battler or trainer or something. It should be about someone who can showcase their proper relationship with their team, which Gold demonstrates in the ways that he is able to creatively utilize his Pokemon team to get out all these interesting situations as partners, not as tools, not as just pure friends, but equals, which is, again, interesting kind of parallel sort of Red's thing. Sort of like a prism. It's like, it's similar. There's those clear parallels, but it's a slightly refracted version of the kind of stuff, which I think is interesting when you compare it characterization-wise, because broad strokes, you could see them being very similar, but when you look at their granular kind of detail, you can see the ways that they go about their own special ways of training.
I definitely have a thing to add on to that. Also, Pokemon Special A. Red and Gold's personalities are quite different on how they interact with all the other characters in the story, because Red is more of a, I suppose, reactive character. We've named him as the 90s every boy. His role is much more to react to the world around him rather than influence it with its personality a great deal. Whereas Gold is so fucking extra that a lot of characters get sucked into his pace. They act very differently around him than they do around other people. Crystal's personality seems to just switch to reacting to him as his voice of reason when she's around him, which I kind of partly dislike, that he overrides her arc of catching Suicune and her identity based off of that and just defaults her into a when Harry met Sally dynamic with him, I suppose.
Yeah, I can agree. I kind of share that criticism where it does feel like by the end, once everyone's reunited, the action has just escalated so much that some of the characters do lose some of the individual idiosyncrasies to them.
I think I felt that the most with Crystal, where early on there was this fun contrast between her very gentle, caring disposition and her high competence and experience in terms of catching and battling Pokemon.
I'm just saying, Crystal felt very ADHD coded to me, specifically in that element of hyperfixation of like, ooh,
Yeah.
I want to collect all these boys, and when something disrupts that, it's like, oh god, my mind having difficulty processing anything else outside of that. She's really given good representation to those people out there who are really out there completing those national dexes with full shinies. Shout out to my lovely wife. You are insane.
I do love how it took 3 arcs for Oak to find someone he actually needs for his Pokemon research.
Oh my god, you just know that Oak has gained years on his life upon the revelation of like, oh my god, I finally have someone else who can write these freaking grants and fill out this paperwork. Oh my, and she likes doing it. Praise Arceus.
To go on to what I meant about idiosyncrasies being sanded off, I don't know if it's fair for me to say that when Crystal was tethered to Gold a lot, her role in the manga just became being the level-headed contrast to him.
Yeah.
A slightly more stereotypical sort of role.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that, because that is something that I really do appreciate about the fact that they did try to spend so much time introducing Crystal with her own arc, because the fact that she's the first girl protagonist in a Pokemon game, it was clear that they could have really easily just made her generic girl character without really developing her anymore. But I appreciate that they put in that initial effort to like give her her own deal. But I think part of the thing where when she gets back with Gold and Silver, and it's almost as if writers sometimes have difficulties figuring out how to showcase male and female relationships outside of the narrow construct of romance.
It's not like she's completely not herself, though.
Yes. Very hyperbolic here.
And she still occupies almost the majority of this arc. We spend a lot of time on Crystal.
Yeah, 3 out of the 5 volumes.
And with this, we see, for example, some of the most absolutely cool stuff with her, like her training on Mount Mortar when she can't use her arms. It's so sick. I didn't remember her being so intense. And her team is so high level, like from the very beginning. What?
Yes. She is super hyper competent. Some detail that I really loved is that at the bumpers where they show off Crystal's Pokedex, the fact that it's like, oh, she's captured 142 and she's found 143. She's out there with a level 46 Cubone. We love to see it. I'm honestly astonished, though, that Meganium is still as low level compared to the rest of her team, considering how prominent it features near the tail end.
Well, it was a very late addition to the team, though.
That's true, yeah.
But I do love Heather little mechanics of how she uses specifically Pokemon that are very good for catching mechanics-wise. There's Smoochum and her mean look. There's Cubone with its false swipe, Parasect with Sweet Scent and Spore. No, it's like excellent.
Yeah,
and then in contrast, you have Gold, who remains fairly underleveled with his team, relatively speaking, compared to other protagonists.
Yeah.
They kind of hit the 40s, which mirrors what the games are like, where you get to the league, and you're only really in the level 40s, because then you have the whole post-game later on.
Yeah, if you're lucky, though, because there is still quite a high jump in between Blackthorn City and Victory Road. And then Crystal also works really well with other characters, like Bill you mentioned, and we probably need to mention Eugene before we head off to Silver, because Eugene is a very unexpected companion and rival on Crystal's journey. His flamboyance clashing with her down-to-business attitude makes for a very entertaining dynamic for me.
Yeah, he's like this magic Kaito tuxedo mask-esque savant, and that's a lot of fun.
He's so obsessed with Suicune that he has a Suicune symbol on his dick.
On his Speedos!
Which is very important. I mean, yeah, it's actually on his underwear, but you know that he has a tattoo down there.
Oh my god. Oh, to be a fly on the wall at Game Freak's headquarters to be like, listen, all right, we need to make a kind of rival character with the whole catching Suicune and all that stuff. Should we just make, like another trainer? No. We need a magician. Yeah, I mean, it is probably Tuxedo Mask that they're going for in the design, but I'm just very curious of what was going on with that.
Oh, and also, I do love the big cry that Crystal has at the end of Aggretique, aside from the mum moment, when she realizes her insignificance from Suicune's point of view. It was probably my favorite moment of this arc.
I mean, we complained about the stare, but something that I do find interesting with Crystal, her moment where she doubts herself and stuff, it kind of read to me as someone who's been seen as being so confident and skilled in their area that it kind of reads as a former gifted and talented student kind of thing. They're assumed to have all these inherent gifted abilities, but as soon as they start actually facing real pushback with that challenge, sometimes people don't know how to handle that kind of stuff, especially because so much of her early arcs are there to showcase that, she's just probably the best capture specialist out there as a trainer. Even though the ways that it concluded are a little iffy, I do find that as an interesting arc to give a character like Crystal, because that's a good lesson that some people, especially kids, might need to have. There are going to be people who are going to be better at you at certain things, and, you got to be able to not take that as a value judgment on yourself. You aren't defined by how good you are at a certain skill, and you have value outside of that. And that's something that I think people, myself included, can sometimes struggle with.
Yeah, what we mean to say is that Crystal is Birdly from Deltarune.
Oh my god. How dare you? How dare you disrespect Crystal like that?
I like Birdly quite a bit. He's quite humorous for me. I can't hate him.
Alright, yeah, that's fair.
I didn't even respect Homo's feelings. It's kind of a main trio thought, but I did really enjoy the scene where she's like, we can use the tracking feature on the Pokédex. Didn't you two know this? And Gold and Silver, who have just gotten out of this, and just think to themselves unanimously, not a word. Not a word.
Yeah, no, Crystal is that girl who has read through the entire instruction manual for a game and actually knows the full rule set of things. Crystal was the first person to tell her friends about EVs and IVs.
Her actual specialization is speedrunner, not capturer.
Oh my god. She is very speedrun coded. Yeah. This is kind of an extension of something we talked about with Yellow in the last arc, but with Crystal, something I do once again appreciate is the fact that they want to add this kind of diversity in what a Pokemon trainer can be. My mind goes to the Pokemon tabletop games where there are all these different kind of trainer classes where the standard gym battle kind of trainer is called the ace trainer, whereas Crystal would be classified as a capture specialist. Someone who is focused on trying to find the specific Pokédex completion thing, which I think that's a good move to have because much as some gatekeepers try to say otherwise, one of the strengths to Pokemon as a series is that it's very malleable to different playstyles. If you want to be someone who just speed runs their way to the Elite Four with only their level 70 Squirtle, you could do that. If you want to be the person that tries to collect every single shiny for the entire Pokemon, you can do that as well. If you're someone who is wanting to try and breed a Pokemon that has the perfect EVs and IVs, you're low-key doing Pokemon eugenics, but you can still do that.
I love the thought that one of the future protagonists will be a Nuzlocke. Which one do you think that would be, Henry? Which one is fine with Pokemon dying?
Oh, that's really hard. Hang on, let me look up the Dex holders. Maybe White? She's that kind of ruthless Hollywood type. She wants to get in the movies.
That's a good point. Otherwise, I was thinking maybe Emerald, but he has yet another thing going for him.
Oh, God. We'll get to Emerald.
Yeah, we'll get to Emerald when we get to Emerald. But for now, let's go on to Silver, who is probably the one Dex holder who is the least changed from his game counterpart. I still like, for example, that they still use a lot of plot points from the game, like Lance telling him to be friendlier to his Pokemon, but from a different context here. And also because he works for a while in return for information about the Mask of Ice and whatnot. And also the bit from the game about him raising the friendship of his Pokemon, like Totodile using frustration situation at the start when Feraligatr uses Return at the end against Will.
Yeah.
Like, this is paralleled in the game by his Golbat, who is with him for almost the entirety of the game, finally evolving into a Crobat in the last battle.
Yeah, I love it when the Pokemon games do that. Like, I recall Gensis doing a similar kind of thing where one of their Pokemon has frustration at the maximum possible damage output to indicate that they are just that terrible of a trainer to their Pokemon. So the fact that they are able to translate that so well into the manga is, I think, a pretty good testament to the ways that Game Freak was able to naturally integrate that narrative just through their mechanics. But also, I think that it's a kind of character arc that we kind of saw with Blue, but at the same time, I don't think is something that was explored in that much depth of. Honestly, sometimes Silver reads as a condemnation of certain kinds of Pokemon trainers, as in people who play Pokemon, where they might take almost a apathetic view of their Pokemon, like, oh, I'm gonna capture 50 different Pokemon until I find the one with the perfect nature kind of thing. Like, the fact that they did that even in Gen 2 is interesting.
I mean, I also think it's a cool link to have where, okay, one of the big things this character is known for is stealing one of the dexes in the Pokemon at the start of the game and running off. And here they link that to, okay, so we already have a thief character, so let's make these two very linked characters. And it's like, oh, clearly they learned this from a similar place. Either Green taught him, or maybe
Price.
Trying not to call him Winston. Price. It was something that his league taught them both.
I love Winston. What are you talking about?
Well, also,
I want to just gaslight Hoven into thinking that he was called Winston the whole time.
We're gonna freaking gaslight our audience, why don't we? But to your point, with him having that learned behavior of being a bandit, and the fact that they were able to take a character that, even with the kind of details that they added in the game mechanically, the fact that they were able to add this dark backstory, and the fact that they wanted to take steps of figuring out, okay, what would make a character like Silver tick, I think is an interesting kind of development to take with the series. Once again, something that Pokemon Adventures does very well is the fact that they try to take the kind of archetypes that are established in the games, which, especially on Game Boy hardware, are very limited in terms of what kind of depth they can add to these characterizations. But taking that starting point and fleshing it out into something that feels much more believable and understandable. I do just really like the stuff they've done with Silver. Now, on that note, what are y'all's thoughts on the fact that people really like to ship Silver with Green? I don't know, they read very sibling coded to me, so I'm...
The thing with adoptive sibling character that grow up together, I generally don't like that. I generally don't like that as an excuse when somebody wants to write an incest king story, and if you want to, then you do you, that's fine. But just going with the excuse, oh, they're not biologically related, so that's fine. I find that an awful excuse that kind of invalidates adoptive relationships and found family and whatnot. I think in this case, though, it depends if the characters consider themselves siblings from the very beginning to me, because when it comes to, for example, a manga like The Promised Neverland that has an entire orphanage, what we think is an orphanage anyway, then we kind of have some young love in between of that, but it really all depends whether they think they are siblings or not, especially since it's a lot of kids growing up together. So in the end, these are the boundaries that will have to be created by the author and the characters. In Silver's case, he directly says that Green is his sister, so I don't know.
Yeah, they say that at the literal last chapter. Although I will say, shout out to freaking Gold, Mr. Riz King, as soon as this big moment, oh, all the dex holders are together. First thing, hey, who's the cutie? It's very funny. Just tag your fix, people. That's what I'm gonna say. One other thing that stuck out with me in this arc kind of brings my mind to the original Kanto dex holders, and something that I appreciate about the Gold and Silver arc as well is the fact that they take these moments to devote entire chapters to checking in on them, which that runs the risk of breaking up the pacing of certain things. But I really do appreciate the ways that they are able to showcase that kind of continuation with the arcs that those characters underwent in their own respective volumes. Even though he has changed a bit, there's still that element of impulsiveness with Red. Green is still a bit of a scamp who's still pulling that Lupin the Third type of crap, and Blue is still doing some of his edgelordy things. But the fact that they've maintained some of those elements while still showcasing that they've clearly grown and evolved, that's a nice little thing to see.
I wanted to talk some more about the character that kind of raised Green and Silver to jump up of that. I'm, of course, talking about Winston. So I like how the first time we see Mask of Ice, they could actually be anyone. Mm-hmm. The Houndour suggests Karen in the Ilex Forest. The Aridos suggests Koga or Bugsy or Janine.
The Hare suggests Claire.
Mm-hmm. Or Eusine.
The Ghastly suggests Morty, and the Delibird kind of points to Price, who's already less of a suspect due to his age and disability. But then, when they actually set up the mystery in the Lake of Rage, by that point he just keeps using ice thorns and everything, so it's pretty obvious what it is. I think the Fisherman is the masked man. He suspiciously refuses to give his name.
No, it's Lorelei, obviously.
And I couldn't have done it without the Fisherman. Yes, you could.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually do have a note on the Fisherman, because he's obviously Yellow's surrogate dad at this point, but since he gives Gold his number on round 32, I think this might be Fisherman Ralph. It's the only Fisherman who shares the phone number there, and I know that because I've been playing Soul Silver in my Nuzlocke recently, which you can all see at the $1 tier on patreon.com/Wensleydale Cheddar. Check out in the description, and the first episode is free, so you might as well watch.
Thank you for being a patron.
But anyway, Ralph calls us frequently to complain about his kids that he barely talks to, he's estranged from these days, and encourages us to call our mom instead. So I think this is why he's become so close to Yellow. He sees her as his surrogate daughter here.
To a point you made earlier, I do like that they did try to make even the most minor kind of characters have that kind of, the fact that they coalesce them even at the end. Fisherman Ralph, that's a great example. It would be very easy to make him just this sort of standard, like, yeah, I'm just a big old fisherman boy. All right, Yellow, reel him in kind of deal. It's a testament to the writing where this, seeing where the stakes of this go, the fact that we're reminded of all the people that stand to be harmed by Price's, God, you're making me want to say Winston.
It's an infection.
But the fact that there are all these people that we've grown to care out outside of just the gym leaders and the main dex holders is something kind of neat. Like, also the fact that I'm reminded of that one picnicker and the geeky guy.
Yeah, the camper and the super nerd.
Oh yeah, super nerd Miles. That's right. Yeah, Junior Traver Evan and Super Nerd Miles. And also the fact that the radio people are featured prominently. The fact that they make the announcer at the Pokemon League have a character. These are all people that they did not need to give them that kind of personality and stuff.
Yeah, Faulkner didn't need to be the cop that appears at the very beginning of the game, but he got an additional role.
I mean, he didn't need to be a cop in general.
Yeah.
Hey, a cab.
Yeah, shall we call Faulkner Sherlock since he has a fucking boomerang?
Boo. I think it's interesting that they did decide to try and introduce certain characters ahead of time. Again, they could have just made that just a random police officer, but the fact that they decided to use that as a means of introducing one of the future gym leaders, that's some good efficient storytelling right there.
Yeah, I do love the matchups in the big tournament, in the exhibition matches.
Oh, the elite. Yeah.
Especially since Faulkner, he's the representative of the law, the fucking cop, and he fights against Janine, who is instead basically an outlaw or daughter of an outlaw.
She's very Rouge the Bat-coded, you can say.
Rouge Butt. Fucking, that's how he named her Butterfree in Mystery Dungeon. Yeah. I love that Erica once again has a leading role in leadership among the Kanto gym leaders. I love Winston's gym match against her.
Fucking Winston!
No, it's Winston. It's Winston. I forgot a lot about this manga, but not the cool factor of Price breaking through Erica's meticulous petal dance shield strategy with a simple powder snow. It was very impressive.
Because that's very reflective of their characters, too. Erica is so guarded as a character in the manga. So much of her characterization is just her keeping everything incredibly close to the chest, putting on this very meticulous constructed appearance, which could be reflected in the ways that she puts up all these defenses in her battle. Whereas Price's whole thing is, as this manipulative trainer, the way he's able to get his way is by breaking through your defenses, by everything from him faking a disability to appearing like an old man. Everything is done to get you to lower your defenses so that he can get in for the kill, or rather the fainting. Once again, Pokemon battles. Reflecting characterization.
I did notice also one more cool thing about Winston is that they foreshadow the moment of him tapping his cane to order his Pokemon with Morse code or whatnot, or with just some special signals from far away. He first used it in the battle with Whitney against the Mirage of Suicune, and then with his team and with Ho-Oh and Lugia.
Speaking of, I've not done too much digging into the consensus around this arc, but I know some Whitney fans who are not a fan of her depiction in this. I've seen the term character assassination thrown around.
What?
Really?
She's much less of a crybaby than her game counterpart, so I don't understand this.
I am scrolling through Whitney's tag on Tumblr. Dang, people really got some of this art past the censors.
Is it going to be a waifu thing? Is the thing that she's much more of a tomboy than her game counterpart? I don't know.
I always read Whitney as being kind of like an idol kind of character.
So I guess to play devil's advocate a bit, on the one hand, I think some people's readings of Whitney is that she is kind of a subversive character. Like, she seems kind of ditzy and fluffy, but then she has a surprisingly strong team with her Tauros and the like.
Yeah.
And then there's that balance of she can't really handle losing well, but she is overall good-natured. I think a lot of the supplemental material kind of
that's the kind of
characterizes her like this.
That's the kind of characterization they gave Whitney in the anime.
Whereas this one, I feel like they went for, this is a character we want to run with as an entertaining stinker. Because she is a bit of a stinker, as it were. She's like easily the most outwardly sort of self-centered and self-absorbed, and a lot of her comments reflect that.
Okay, I never really read her as good-natured in the game. I always read her as very shallow, and I think that comes through very well here.
Yeah, I didn't get that impression either. I'm just looking at Whitney's Pokemon card, where she's just like surrounded by hearts and all that stuff, and she kind of reads to me as an idol, where she's all bubbly kind of stuff, being kind of young and juvenile, because, you know, her team is comprised of all of these baby Pokemon or Pokemon that evolve from baby.
Yeah. I think a big thing is that a lot of the time, because the games are fairly arch with their characterization, I feel like it's easy for people to get very attached to their own headcanons of how a character is supposed to be.
Yeah, that's true.
And when things deviate in a way they don't like, it annoys them.
Especially if it's a waifu thing.
I can say with first-hand experience, I know there are people out there that get very protective over certain characters and how they're characterized.
Also, Whitney and Mary are girlfriends, and you can't convince me otherwise. And
Yeah.
So are Chuck and Walker, Faulkner's dad. Walker does seem like a gym leader concept. I do wonder if his design has been used anywhere else, because I can't remember him for the life of me.
I'm trying to Google Pokemon Walker, but I'm just getting the Pokewalker.
And I do love that panel where, after losing to Suicune, they imagine it going after the apprentices after the loss. So it's very nice and kind of feeds into the theme of descendants and generation gaps and so on.
That's kind of like a theme within the games as well, where so much of Gold and Silver, both the games and this manga, is defined by this feeling of the first generation with Kanto was such a big thing. And we're moving on to a different thing and trying to navigate that kind of stuff. Like, we see that with the elements of Team Rocket trying to come back from losing Giovanni. We see that in the whole ways they build up the confrontation with Red, and the fact that the mechanical climax of the Gold and Silver games is you being able to overcome the mechanical representation of your past self. It's interesting to be able to see that be a through line in so much of the media with Gold and Silver and not just the games.
I've just had a thought. If Whitney was like this, she would be kind of similar in outward personality to Jasmine, which would be just kind of like too much of the same thing.
That's the thing. I always thought Jasmine was the waifu for people in the Johto region.
And that's the thing, it adds a bit of variety, because I feel like so many of the gym leaders are very mentorly and understanding and savvy, and it's nice to have a gym leader that is a big outlier and has a more abrasive quality to them.
Yeah, because that was a strength with the Kanto gym leaders, the fact that not all of them were allies, the fact that some of them were straight up villainous antagonists. And I don't know, this is just my opinion. I didn't grow up as much with the Gold and Silver Gen 2 stuff, but in hindsight, it does feel like the gym leaders of Johto stick out in my memory way less than some of the other generation gym leaders. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Gen 4s stand out to me, but I think that's just because I played it so much. I guess, because I've also heard the complaint like, oh, Whitney is portrayed as really weak relative to the other gym leaders, and I'm like, I don't know, I feel she still got a big showing with the first time we met Price and the battle against the Ice Suicune. We got lots of showing off of her ability to do creative tactics there and think on her toes. And she's the first person to make the connection that Price, aka Winston, is the Masked Man.
Yeah.
So...
If I could jump off to another gym leader, you were mentioning earlier, Wensleydale, the arc of the tournament between the gym leaders. One battle that you didn't mention was the battle between Brock and Jasmine, which I really enjoyed that as a little reveal with Steelix and stuff like that.
I do like how Brock, of all people, fights Jasmine, but since he's so different to the anime version, he doesn't go like, Awooga, pretty girl.
I feel like maybe that was the motivation to pair him up like that, but the fact...
Kusaka just doesn't write him that way at all. I love how the Steelix with the onyx casing around it, it just looks like the Forever Alone troll
Oh my god.
It really does. With the big jaw and like all of the wrinkles.
God, I can't unsee that. God damn you, Hoven.
For a moment there, I thought he said big gel, and I was like, hello, everybody.
So, this Onyx isn't doing very well against me. It's weird,
Oh my
right?
god. Because even when we jump ahead to Gen 3, I remember the gym leaders way more in that one. Faulkner, Bugsy, and Whitney, those are the main ones I remember, but I have so much difficulty trying to say a single thing about Morty. I know he's a ghost trader.
He's a very forgettable ghost type gym leader.
Yeah.
In here, I quite like him, actually. I think he's like Reigen Arataka if he actually had psychic powers. He's apparently a dreamboat here because he has this stupid mullet.
Oh my god.
And I do like how he makes a connection with Lieutenant Surge, and he has his own adventure going for him, his own mystical motivation. I like his role among the gym leaders here as the kind of spiritual guide and detective at the same time.
I mean, they definitely emphasize that more in the manga. I guess that's just a testament to the fact that the manga does a good job of taking relatively blank slate characters and fleshing them out a lot more.
I also love how both the games and the manga have Claire as this haughty weirdo who just can't accept a loss. She like uses forsooth and so on, and it's like, no, don't use loss and me in the same sentence. No, stop that.
She's just like a Ren Fair girl. It reminds me of this one post I've read on Tumblr. You just know that dragon-type Pokemon trainers are the horse girls of their world. Dragon Pokemon, they're super hard to get. They have all these weird specific idiosyncrasies. They're a lot more harder to fully evolve. I feel like Claire would have a whole lot of things to say about these are the proper methods of grooming your Dragonair. You gotta be able to use this specific soap.
On the matter of Claire, one thing I did really strike me about this arc is it did sort of showcase how very expository the dialogue can be, which is often fine, but sometimes you get things like the very clunky way that Ryu, which means dragon, fun fact, explains all of Claire's roles to her.
Yeah.
Like, as you know, you are the daughter of our clan leader. I kind of had that with Karen and Will, with their evil monologuing later as well. It's like, you do not need to be telling her this much.
I was going to say that I love how the 16 gym leaders are introduced by the monikers in the exhibition match, but notably Surge's was changed to the Lightning Soldier because they couldn't call him the Lightning American.
Well, that's interesting because, okay, Henry, is chum in reference to friends and not fish guts a thing that North Americans say? Because he calls Morty this.
When Americans hear the word chum, Plankton from SpongeBob is usually the first thing that we would associate with that.
Right. Yeah, okay, because I was thinking maybe I should be reading him out as Aussie.
Oh, God.
Because he has a lot of other things that steer him away from reading as British, but Quasi could definitely fit in with her nicely.
Yeah, I could see that.
I know that we keep circling back to Whitney, but I love that she's trekking the ice path with a fit consisting of an anorak and shorts. She has to have the shorts. She has legs that the world needs to see.
She needs her GF Mary to get it on camera.
She knows what the listeners...
Surge posing like a Dragon Ball Z character when he makes the Magnemite use Zap Cannon is such a vibe.
Also, the fact that he uses the Magnemite as a little handcuff.
Ah, yes. It's the ability Magnet Ball.
I'm just saying, fanfic writers, if you've done it, just tag that.
It's also very cool that we get a big showcase for Sabrina in her Bugsy match.
Yeah.
Because obviously her green battles, both alongside and against, were a bit on the messier side within their arcs. So it's cool that she gets like a really cool moment without any caveats.
Yeah, also Sabrina, in a lot of the early arcs, so much of her battling stuff is just about the mind game kind of thing of like, oh, I'm gonna trap you in like a little psychic vision thingy and all that. And the fact that, you know, it's a league battle. She's not wanting to bust out those non-league certified moves here, so it's a good showcase of like their abilities. Honestly, I can't think of a single one of the gym leaders that doesn't get at least some time to shine.
Yeah, definitely. I do love how Bill can stay quasi-main character to the whole series at this point. He's been in the focus the most out of the side characters. I bet he's probably an author favorite.
Which game do they introduce Babe? Is that Hoenn?
That's Hoenn. No, wait,
Okay.
no, that's Gen 4.
Ah, okay.
Baby is Gen 4 and Lynette is Gen 3.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, no one really remembers Lynette. She kind of will feature in the next arc a little bit, but...
Lynette is in a very inaccessible house in the game, like on the way to the mountains of the region, I forget the name, to the falls, something falls, where you get the meteorite.
Well, I think also people don't remember Lynette too much is because Bridget, who has gone on to become the main person for Pokemon Bank, is their older sister. So
yeah, obviously we all love Brisket and Winston. So, do you want to get to the random observations now?
yeah.
Okay, so one of the seamless nods to the games, I quite like the Mask of Ice using Headbutt to knock Gold off a tree. It's very fun, especially since it's introduced in the Ilex Forest where the battle takes place.
Aibo is Japanese for partner or sidekick, which is how I learned that Apom's English name is basically unchanged from the Japanese Apam.
Interesting, because I think in the original he's called Aitaro.
Huh? Interesting. Okay. That's weird. That could have worked so well as a Japanese pun. Okay.
Oh my gosh, we haven't mentioned the most vital member of Gold's team, his little Togepi.
Ah!
I love the fact that we just get a rat bastard as a Pokemon member.
He's such a fucking evil bitch, and he's fucking up Glyca just moments after birth. He becomes a delinquent immediately. It's so good.
I do love how doofy Gold's goggles look, with the circular bridge in between them.
Yeah, no, those are some Digimon-looking goggles. It's getting into some dangerous territory, Game Freak. Ooh, other things that I like, because I love to fixate on the Pokemon teams for the Dex holders. I just really like the way that Silver just went with all the edgiest Pokemon, from Murkrow to Sneasel to Kingdra to Ursaring.
He's got a very unbalanced team too. He's got like 3 water types, 2 to 3 dark types if you count Mega Evolutions later.
Yeah, also, it did make me confused when he did battle Gold. Which of Silver's Pokemon blocked Polibo? It was kind of hard to tell if it was Sneasel, Murkrow, or Croconaw. It could have been any one of them.
That's an excellent question. It might have been Croconaw. Because the moves that they gave Croconaw were Frustration, Slash, Scratch, Water Gun, Bite, Ice Punch, Surf, Return, Hydro... So, probably not that... That is a moment where things are a little bit difficult to read.
Speaking of blocking, I like how Sudowoodo's Mimic is used to block enemy moves in close combat. It makes for very interesting action on that part.
Also, he ate the gum fruit with his stretchy foot.
Definitely.
I didn't talk about my main girl, Misty. Oh my god. The fact that as an insane person who is a poke shipping, but for the manga person, I found her whole vibe with Red and between red, yellow. That was interesting, especially with green just being a little instigator, being like, oh, why don't y'all just live together?
Oh yeah, she like mirrors the line that red uses at the end of the yellow arc.
So I guess Kusaka is an Ash Misty shipper, maybe.
Maybe. Well, that's the thing. We'll see red and yellow's whole dynamic develop as time goes on, because we do see a lot more of that. Actually, yeah, we also didn't talk about the whole yellow reveal. That's the whole thing where red finds out, oh, yellow's got something underneath that hat.
That's the thing. There's so fucking much in this arc that we're obviously going to forget some stuff.
So I think then, if I could make a little digression then, I want to just say I do really like the red and blue dynamic of this, because we see, as I mentioned earlier, Red's whole arc of him wanting to become a gym leader and pushing himself too hard and realizing, no, I need to go back up to Mount Silver to heal myself. That's a good extension of the kind of development he underwent in the initial series, because a problem that Red continually deals with is the fact that, yeah, he'll take on more than he chews. He can sometimes overestimate his own abilities. But the fact that he's able to realize, wait, no, I'm pushing myself way too hard. I need to stop. I doubt that the Red at the end of his initial arc would have made the same choices that he made by Gold. And I think that's a good sign of the development there. It's interesting to be able to see the previous main point of view character be shown to have to undergo this process of healing, where he's basically dealing with chronic pain because of Sabrina's stuff. The fact that it's something that he has to make accommodations for, and the fact that he has to work towards managing it, that's something that's interesting. And I kind of would have liked it if they maintained that as an angle for the remainder of the series, instead of it being like, oh, I took my nice, sexy bubble bath thing in the mountains, so I don't have to deal with the lasting consequences of my previous arcs.
Just a small note, it was done by Lorelei rather than Sabrina. But...
Oh, Laura, my bad. I got confused because Sabrina also similarly has to do that kind of healing.
Yeah, which is also a nice note. And yeah, it would have been nice to see a permanently disabled, in a way, protagonist in the series. But again, I can forgive it because Mount Silver is a very interesting location in that regard. So I quite like it. The gym leader exam is an interesting piece of flavor, but it's funny how Red's so self-conscious about him losing some physical ability thanks to Lorelei, so he doesn't feel like he can take on the gym leader position, while Winston is like, I'm 80 years old and on a wheelchair. Woohoo!
Yeah.
No, he's good with that gym leader position. He's fine.
I mean, that's what legacy status will get you. I imagine that gym leaders can get the equivalent of tenure if they put in enough years.
Also, he has the moving ice sculpture bullshit, so he's got that going for him. I know I gave Crystal's mum shit for slapping her, but I kind of want to strangle her myself for saying that playing with small children isn't really work. You want to say that again, little shit? Try keeping a gaggle of 6-year-olds in check while you try to teach them some fucking English.
Yeah, oh my god, the fact that Crystal starts off as a daycare worker, it's like, oh my god. I think part of the reason why she was thinking, yeah, I'm okay burning myself at both ends here. I don't have to worry about 6-year-olds anymore. I can manage this.
Fucking Crystal and her mom, are they fucking ANCAPs?
I don't know. I feel like Crystal's too much of an academic to be an ANCAP, but...
Yeah.
Maybe Neolib.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. All the Dex holders are too smart to be ANCAPs, really. One funny moment with Crystal, I think she introduces herself to Yellow or someone else, and then she's like, I'm Crystal. People call me the Capturer. And I'm like, no one actually calls you that, Crystal.
Who, Crystal? Give us names.
What are you talking about? No.
Although I do like Yellow's illustration of Crystal that they did. Actually, one other thing. In terms of specific endpoints, I do love the ways that it ends for her. The fact that she does get to be Professor Oak's assistant, and the fact that as soon as Crystal has to leave to go do other things... No, wait, it's because of Daisy. Yeah. The fact that Oak is incapable of doing his job without Daisy is very funny.
Very much so. I feel like at this point we can play a drinking game, like take a shot every time someone says, the Pokemon storage system is down!
Listen... It was 2001. Imagine teleporting Pokemon energy through a dial-up connection. It ain't gonna happen. Frankly, I think we're lucky that some of those Pokemon didn't come out looking all corrupted and stuff like that through a bad connection.
Yeah, like Bill did himself. Also, he invents the handheld storage system. So we keep saying that this manga precedes actual developments in the games, and it actually did, since it was introduced in Sword and Shield.
It also preceded the Pokeathlon with some of the athletic feats that we see Gold doing with his skateboarding, swimming, pool, shooting.
I mean, yeah, they do that around the national park, which it's kind of seems strange that we don't see more of the national park, especially since we've got the capturer. There could be a bug catching contest. This could easily be an introduction to her or something like that.
With the parody song title chapters, with Into the Unknown, Pokemon was doing a Frozen 2 parody decades before they even knew it would be a thing.
If we're talking chapter titles, in chapter 122, Querulous Quillfish, it's like, man, you really wanted to make that alliteration work, didn't you?
So one interesting thing regarding localization. So Tin Tower is localized as Bell Tower here, just like in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I assume that just like in the game, it's not to draw association to 9/11, since, the two towers and one was burned. But they then call this Tin Tower later during the tournament arc, so I don't know, mustn't be an oversight here. I wonder if Eugene's Clear Bell was a game item of sorts. I vaguely remember something like that from Soul Silver, but I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, I think so, because Gen 2, was that the gen that debuted held items? I think so.
Yes, I do remember Tidal Bell as something that the Kimono Girls do for Lugia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Kimono Girls is also one thing that wasn't included in this part, which, with the benefit of hindsight, that's kind of good, because they get more featured in the Heart Gold and Soul Silver games, and then they can feature more in this part of the manga.
Yeah.
So that's good.
One thing I did notice, in the Bugsy introduction chapter, I guess one feature of the very economical storytelling is that it is kind of weird that we don't even get a panel of Bugsy discovering his explorers friends. They're just out at the end. It's like, I feel like you should maybe at least find the room where they are or something.
Oh, also, Bugsy, GNC King, because Gold is initially being like, ooh, woo, cute girl over there. Oh, Bugsy's a guy. And I'm just saying, those cowards could have just been like, oh, look, a cute guy, as soon as you realized.
Nice. Yep, as a fanboy appreciator, I can definitely appreciate him. So, during Bugsy's excavations, when he figures out Unknown formed the word escape, it's such a reach that he immediately uses an escape rope. This fanboy has definitely checked the wiki. Anyone in his place would have assumed anything different.
Also, I think, looking at that panel where it does read escape, I don't think the Unknown letters match up. I'm flipping back to double check that. The Unknown script is pretty easy to recognize. Even if some of the letters get a little wonky, you can still kind of tell what certain things say.
It might be a localization thing. I know that, for example, Ho-Oh is translated differently. H-O-U-O-U instead of H-O-O-H.
I do have to wonder if Polybo was initially meant to be discovered another way, then the idea got scrapped. It did feel a little bit unceremonious here, with Gold just finding him the first instance with the Gramble. I was expecting it to go the direction of, oh, that wasn't quite it, but we have a lead to where he might actually be. But I guess it wasn't a plot thread that Kusaka had much room for. So
it's a pity, because it would have built up the relationship between Gold and one of his oldest Pokemon, and then it would have had more of an emotional impact later on. But I suppose him following another thread with Silver and the Mars Man and whatnot is also fine.
I have one last stray observation. The fact that they did give Pika a girlfriend that you could tell is their girlfriend because of the flower in the hair.
Heterosexual peaks, heterosexual peaks.
Heterosexual mice, yeah.
Yeah.
Quotes Lindsay Ellis.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Gold's Pichu is very fun, but What did you guys think of that inclusion?
I guess I liked it fine. I would have liked that it was looking a little differently rather than, as you say, the Pixar thing of having definite features that make her a girl. But I do like Pika still going back to red, but Yellow still getting her own Pikachu. For that, that's fine with me.
Yeah, they didn't have the foreknowledge that Pikachu in Gen 4 onwards would have a distinctive trait if it's a female Pikachu with the different looking tail.
Okay, I wanted to call it Kusaka Comments Corner, but this turns out to be a very bad acronym, so I'm gonna skip that. So apparently Pokemon Adventures was serialized in 3 magazines, which was something that I found interesting. Kusaka and Yamamoto seemed to like whipping out Pokedex entries more and more during Crystal's run. It's like a chapter can't go by without them, which I find neat. And also one more note about Yamamoto. I do love Yamamoto's Symbolism for Dummies guide in the volume 12 author comment. Did you notice this volume's front cover? In volume 11, not yet rescued Gold and Silver were facing backward, but now they're facing forward. What does this signify?
Maybe the time nonsense in the Ilex forest caused them to slide into another dimension where everything's flipped.
Oh, I guess we'll never know.
Yes, the lore must reveal it.
One comment that stood out to me was the one that mentioned that the English volumes were coming out during Heart Gold and Soul Silver's release. It does really put into perspective how much the localization was catching up at this point, which is not unusual for manga. I mean, Ace mentioned when he was on the podcast that even community tentpoles like Naruto and One Piece would have been doing their big speed-ups to try and get closer to where the current manga was at that time.
Oh yeah, no.
So yeah.
I remember Gold and Silver was when I was actually able to start rereading the Pokemon Adventures manga when I was growing up. I've talked about this before where I would go to my public library and every time I would usually just see the red and blue arcs on there. But then around 2007, they start ramping up and I'm starting to see like, oh wow, here's all the yellow arcs. I was able to read through that and then it's like, oh, the gold ones? Wow. And then I was more or less reading them concurrently when Viz Media was releasing them into the United States because my library was very good about getting the new volumes when they came out. So that was a really interesting experience reading through these things for the first time in like 2010.
I've just realised that I have so many more random notes that I'm going to try to speedrun through them. First, I like how Green was pretending to be this little bloke with an Abra that could teleport you back into New Bark Town. It's not how I expected her to be reintroduced into the story, but there we go. I also like how Blue changed his whole team for the exhibit match to mirror his team in the games, like Red too borrowed the Blastoise and Charizard to mirror his team on Mount Silver in the games. I also like how Red was just implying that he spent a couple of months bathing in gasoline since the Mount Silver water was spreading sacred fire.
I love the swerve that they go to the Pokemon daycare and you think to yourself like, oh, this kindly old woman is going to just, nestle the Pokemon and make sure that they're comfortable. And then she just has this high-security dojo room inside.
She's great.
It's great.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about a weird case of censorship. I don't mean things like child abuse or nudity here. It's something much stranger. Do you remember how in the Yellow Arc, Bruno was battling Bill and Surge over Weepinbell mucus, which was very clearly acid?
Yeah.
So it seems like this goes out of the way to avoid the word acid because they also did it here. Like, Crystal's Parasect mixes some spores to make what is clearly acid to melt a door, but they call it a corrosive instead of the in-game term. Like, they don't even shy away from talking about death, so why is acid such a word to avoid? Like, is it because of the drug connotations? I don't know.
Oh my god, yeah, I haven't noticed that. Perhaps, yeah, because I do recall in 2010 there being very funny, very original Pokemon webcomics that would be out there of like, oh, coughing used acid, oh, this Pokemon's tripping now.
There was another strange change. I thought Super Rising Thunder was Volt Tackle, And it would make much more sense since Pichu can only learn it from breeding. So I don't know why they changed that. Yeah, I guess perhaps because it wasn't very much of a tackle here, but I still think it should have been that.
But, you gotta have that Dragon Ball Z type battle move set. Everyone knows that the longer the name of the super move, the more powerful it is.
Dark-haired Professor Elm threw me for a loop a bit. I very much think of him as dirty blonde rather than brown-haired.
I mean, yeah, you gotta get that inking and stuff. Because if he didn't have that, he would just look like a bit of an Eggman with a weird little tuft at the top.
But also in manga, you have weird cases of people actually having dark brown hair but being uninked. Like in different manga, like Uraraka in MHA, like Tsunayoshi in Katekyo Hitman Reborn. There's different cases of that are just baffling to me. There's the camper and the super nerd from the Yellow Arc. They returned, as you've mentioned. I must say I do love that they are boyfriends. Also, I do like this exchange, the fact that Faulkner in his exchange with Janine when they bond over both trying to go into the footsteps of the dads, and then Faulkner is like, I sense some danger here, and if the danger lurks in the shadows, I have to arrest the source of it. After all, I'm a police officer. Arrest the source of it? And Janine, I imagine, goes like, Faulkner, what the fuck are you talking about?
I think it's very indicative that he didn't last super long in the Force and went to gym leading.
On the matter of trainer types, I love that they kind of just exist in the League audience. Like, you have the bug catchers, the black belts, and then you have a swimmer. Someone just sat there in swimming trunks and goggles and nothing else in the middle of a stadium. What are you doing, my man? Are you not uncomfortable or cold?
Google Earth, always taking pics.
You know what? I can admire his confidence. Yeah, if only. I wonder if it was the same swimmer from the Yellow Arc from Vermilion City. And speaking of, there is also a nice callback. So when Bill calls out people to send all Pokemon to battle Neo Team Rocket, in one small panel you can see the lady who is bathing with her tentacle. And
oh my god!
That's great.
No!
So yeah, that was my last note, ending on a strong one.
The other things I wanted to touch on were, I love Gold's Tears of the Kingdom ass Mantine glider, with all of these Remoraids stuck together in a particular way, and the Mantine on top. It looks like Game Freak were like, okay, we've kind of done a riff on Breath of the Wild. Let's see what we can do with its sequel. You can make Lego things out of Pokemon. I
don't know how this Mantine works. Actually, does it collect Remoraid every time? Does this fisherman just have to follow Gold at all times so that the Mantine can pick up his collection of Remoraid? I don't know how this works.
I imagine it's similar to the weird Starmie shield that one of the trainers did, where they were trapped in a bunch of Staryu and Starmie that formed a little hamster ball.
And I guess I do have kind of a closing note to summarise my thoughts. I mentioned there was always this opening moment of the leap of faith where you're not really sure where the story's going with Kusaka. And I think with the Pokemon franchise just being this unending machine with very fast turnover between games and generations, I think Kusaka is probably the ideal writer for a supplement like this.
Yeah.
Being able to improvise on the fly around certain upsets or new game releases and move the plot around quickly are essential skills to navigate a mechanism moving at this kind of pace, regardless of whatever quibbles I might have with the resulting wrinkles. Because I think, outside of some things, like we mentioned with Crystal's mum, maybe, I guess, not Winston's motivation, a lot of my critiques do come down to that. The pivot does also allow more time to get attached to Crystal, which I think goes some ways to mitigating how later on her role is, a little downplayed later on. I think having a writer that can so richly build upon things that were set up in prior arcs while also doing interesting things with the current one at the same time is exactly the kind of person you want helming this sort of thing.
All right, and I guess that's all our thoughts on this part of the manga, so do you want to head to the Q&A?
Yeah, let's do it!
Okay, so the first question is from Reddit, from Poppy Pori. I don't know how to pronounce it, but as the people in the Nugget Bridge say, I did my best, I have no regrets. The first question is, how much influence do you think pre-release and unreleased material has on Pokemon Special, considering early Gold and Silver betas having elements that made it into Pokemon Special, like Gold's skateboard? So I tackled this question very late into my notes, and I looked through the Bulbapedia page of the incomplete Gold and Silver,
Of the beta and the Space
Yeah.
World demo.
and I can't really see anything else that would be implemented here. I wonder what else was previously, but I can't find anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing with the Space World demo and like a lot of the beta material is that most of like the notable things that we have found through various like bits of data mining and stuff like that, most of the biggest things were people noticing like graphical changes, like the ways that like Cyndaquil used to be Honoguma, and the way that like Bayleaf was a completely different evolution at a certain point.
Remoraid used to be a gun.
Yep. Or that weird steel, like, Ditto thing that had teeth for reasons. It's interesting looking through this that there are some Pokemon that do kind of resemble modern Pokemon. Like, Rinrin, which is this dark cat type, looks kind of like a Litten. This, like, leaf Pokemon, Reefy, looks very much like Leafeon. The evolution for Pinsir kind of just looks like it's, like, Mega Evolution. Oh, also, the original version of Politoed kind of looks like that one, like, electric newt thing in Sword and Shield.
Oh my god, I've just found it, and I have to share this with you. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Hoven, but I've just realized that Hitmontop's Japanese name, or at least its previous version, is Capoeira.
That's funny. That makes a lot more sense than Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan and Top. The three biggest martial artists.
I have a friend who insisted that Hitmonlee was meant to be a reference to Jet Li and not Bruce Lee.
Oh my god.
And I couldn't convince him otherwise.
Weird. Yeah, Bellybolt is the Pokemon that I was thinking of. They have, interestingly enough, very similar kind of designs. But at least on the manga side, I can't really think of much else, because from the other, like, data mined things that we found gameplay-wise, like, most of it was kept very similar. Like, yeah, the locations of certain places were kind of shuffled around. There were certain kind of things that felt a little bit different graphically in terms of the day and night cycle, but considering how long it has taken to write this arc, it would not be surprising if Yamamoto was given a design doc of like, all right, here's what Game Freak's working on right now with the next game. We're thinking of doing a skateboard. And even if I didn't know that, like, I always assumed that they just went with the skateboarder vibe because they were like, well, we want to further differentiate Gold from Red.
It's also just something that could vary from arc to arc, because it seems like around here, it's still not too unaligned with each game release, whereas the schedule, it seems like it's on at the moment, is that Pokemon special arcs come out quite a bit later than the games.
Yeah.
I mean, we're well past Skylight and Violet's released, and the current manga arc it's still Sword and Shield, I believe, at the time of recording.
Yeah, we're in the Sword and Shield arc right now. I think they've delved into some Island of Armor kind of stuff. There's a whole process with that.
Also from Poppy Puri on Reddit, have you seen any other manga change artists in the middle of its run other than Pokemon Special? Not counting modern continuations of older works, or a team of assistants picking up where the previous artist left off.
I mean, there was the recent tragic example with Kentaro Miura and Berserk.
Although that kind of factors into the latter exception that this person mentioned.
Yeah.
I guess if the run can entail, over the course of one chapter, sometimes one panel, then crossovers like Nisakyu and the Magu-chan featuring Protect Me Shugamaru chapter kinda counts.
I feel like you would really like Magu-chan God of Destruction, Henry. It's a very comfy title, and very much like the comfy genre of games that you like made a video essay about.
It's very short as well.
Anime and manga are like amongst my media blind spots, admittedly, when it comes to that. With Pokemon Adventures is kind of like the main exception with that. But yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like American and Japanese media are kind of flipped on this front, in so much as anthologies showcasing a wide variety of creators are much more of a feature of anime, whereas with American comics, they're jumping between different writers and artists on different properties all the time.
Oh yeah, no, as someone who read a lot of American comics and stuff, like, it wasn't that jarring to me whenever I would see that. The only reason, like, the change in art style stuck out to me was because, like, For me, manga had that kind of reputation of it being very creator driven. Like I would hear stories about like certain mangaka like working on that same series for like decades upon decades and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then in the animation department, it's kind of flipped, where I think American animation, it's very much, there's usually a push to drive it towards one consistent house style, whereas with Japan, often within the same show, the animators will really make their mark on the way the characters look and move.
Wait, you're telling me that American animation fans would get really insane about cartoons being off model? This is my first time ever hearing about that.
I guess maybe one example, I was going to mention Dragon Ball Super and Boruto, but this is also like examples of modern continuations of older works, yeah.
Yeah, same with Fairy Tail 100 Year Quest.
Yeah, so no, nothing comes to mind at the moment. If you want to know more about industry stuff like that, I would really recommend that you listen to a podcast called Manga Mavericks that are very good friends of ours. Perhaps they will know more than we do.
I can think of one manhwa example in Solo Leveling, because I believe, the artist died. So the newest material of that is being handled by a different artist, though I'm not sure the specifics, if it's like they're doing kind of a spin-off, or if it is just the chapters picking up. The Wikipedia is kind of vague about it.
I guess we might move on to like the fourth question first from Montaru Testing at SOW Montaru on Twitter, because it's also related to the art and stuff. Would you like to read it out, Henry?
Yeah, how do you feel about the change from Mato to Yamamoto, both the first time reading it and now? And I already kind of mentioned my feelings with that. I remember being a little bit like confused about it when I was reading it for the first time growing up, mostly because I have distinct memories of trying to emulate Mato's kind of chibi style as Pokemon trainers, because I really enjoyed that.
I think it struck me that initially it reminded me of something like Zetai Karen Children. It's something with like the very narrow, tall eyes and the similarly narrow, open mouths. There was a very distinctive look to whenever you just had a smiling face from Crystal.
Yeah.
And then, as mentioned earlier, it gradually finds its way to being pretty cohesive with Mato's, if not a completely seamless imitation.
Yeah, I didn't even register it first time around, so I'm not the best person to answer that question. I like the variety of chibi and full body designs like interchangeably. So when Yamamoto does less of that, I feel like it could use some variety. But we'll see. I don't remember how the different arcs later on were drawn, so it will be a good surprise for me.
And then the third question from Poppy Pori.
If Pokemon Adventures got an anime, who would you want to have voice the characters?
Ah, yes. Because I'm a filthy casual, this list is just going to feature the most basic bitch dub voices ever. I do not know Seiyu, not really many dub VAs beyond, like, the big names all that well. So, I guess we'll start with the Dex holders and compare each list of Dex holders.
Yeah.
So, Red, I got Yuri Lowenthal. You know, he can do kind of a typical protagonist voice of all kinds. He can do, like, Simone from Gurren Lagann. He can do Spider-Man from the Insomniac games. He's Sasuke in Naruto, so he has a bit more of a hot-headed streak. He can nail that. For Blue, I went with, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Griffin Puatu, who plays Louis from Beastars. I think he has that kind of cool rival kind of vibe down really, really well. Then Green, I picked Laura Bailey, because I think she can do, like, high-pitched enough to make, like, a convincing young teen character, but she can also do very, like, playful, jovial characters who are kind of wily. Yellow, I went with Tia Ballard, because I feel like Yellow is a smaller, child-coded character with a very high-pitched voice. And Tia Ballard is also the voice of Chopper, who shares Pikachu's voice actor, so it all ties together. In Japanese, but yeah. Oh my god, sorry, I fucked up. Tia Ballard did not play Chopper, she played Happy in Fairy Tail. I'm so sorry. For Gold, I went with Brian Donovan, kind of leaning into that Digimon thing. He plays Davis in the dub of Digimon. He's a very doofy, hot-headed character, and he's also Rock Lee in Naruto. And then Silver, I went with Jonas Scott, who I mostly know as Legoshi from Beastars.
He has a very specific low voice. Yeah.
Low-key, husky voice. Yeah, but he's also got kind of a softness to it, which I think fits nicely with Silver. And then Crystal, I went with, I believe it's pronounced Xanthi Huen,
Yeah.
who plays Haru Okumura from Persona 5. It's a really good combo of bubbly and upbeat, but also can be very deceptively tough.
So I've got voices for everyone apart from Crystal. I didn't manage to find one for her. So I think I definitely wanted to get Kappe Yamaguchi as either Red or Gold. So Kappe Yamaguchi played Usopp, L, and Inuyasha, among others. So he's one of my favorite voice actors. He's no stranger to main roles. And first of all, he has a lot of range. Those characters he plays can be very different. But he's got this kind of laid-back tone to his voice that I feel like would work best for Red and his arrogance and kind of playfulness, especially as he plays Jin in Yu Yu Hakusho. That's kind of the vibe I'm going for. And I think the fact that he has so much range works really well because Red is kind of an everyman, so this is the kind of vibe. With Blue, we keep making Sasuke comparisons, so I just went with Noriaki Sugiyama, who played Sasuke Ishida from Bleach, England from Hetalia. I think his kind of nasal tone of voice works well for a grumpy character like him, and he can play younger characters too, despite his serious and cool tone, so I thought he would work really well. With Green, I just went with Akemi Okamura, who plays Nami in One Piece, and Theo from Porco Rosso. Obviously, Nami is my point of comparison here, but I mainly would like to see Okamura give her a less aggro voice than she usually gives Nami, so I thought this would be interesting. With Yellow, I went with Megami Han, who plays Gon in Hunter x Hunter and Akko in Little Witch Academia. I wanted an actress who could do a very good boyish tone, but also be very young and kind of introspective and gentle, and I feel like her performance would work really well for that. With Gold, I went for Chris Pratt, because he has to play someone.
In the Japanese dub, for some reason.
No, he's going to play Yazine. I think that this would be best.
I love catching Suicunes.
I wanted to find someone for Gold, someone who would have a boisterous attitude, but not be too low of a voice. And I just didn't find one in time. But if you manage to find someone, let us know in the comments, listeners.
For me, I was thinking I could see Sam Riegel maybe busting out a kind of voice like that. Honestly, I was thinking Yuri Lowenthal for Gold myself when I think about it, because in addition to like some of that, he played Rickon in Fire Emblem Awakening, who is like this sort of precocious, younger coded character. I mean, in terms of like some of the characters I was thinking of, I think that you do have to contend with a lot of some of these people eventually aging up. Like in this hypothetical dub, would the Dex holders age up voice-wise as time went on?
It's interesting because seiyus don't really do that. They usually keep the voice similar, like non-relative to age. Like, you know how Goku's voice is still, despite him being a grandpa. Oh, and also I was going to mention that with Silver, I would cast probably Romy Park, who plays Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist and Switzerland in Hetalia. So yeah, I would go for a not too low of a voice. I kind of thought it would be too obvious, and she can play a character who has the guard up all the time really well and could lean into the angst while not shying away from the anger and comedy when Silver's shouting at Gold and whatnot.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, in terms of my sort of voice cast, I do like Laura Bailey as a potential Green. If I could make a different suggestion for Crystal, though, I feel like Kate Higgins could do a pretty good job with that. Kate Higgins, she was the voice actress for a whole bunch of things. Most notably is playing Miles Tails in some of the recent Sonic stuff. She voices Pauline in a bunch of Mario stuff.
Sakura Haruno in Naruto?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, we got more Naruto connection. Listen, Fire Emblem Awakening. So Fire Emblem has influenced my casting choices a fair bit.
Oh, C2 and Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Yeah, that's a voice that could fit Green.
Oh, and yeah, she voices Pyrrha in Tears of the Kingdom. Then for Red, I was thinking Jack DeSana, who... he was the voice of Sokka in the original Avatar: The Last Airbender and has been recently playing Callum in The Dragon Prince, which is going to be getting an upcoming season. Because he does a thing where, like, he can do comedic voices, but he can also hit that serious kind of gruff tone. And I think that would be pretty good. And then for Yellow, I was thinking Erika Ishii, mostly because there's this game she was in called Wildflowers that I absolutely love, and they play a character named Kim who is an NB butcher in that game, so it's like that might be neat to add that little angle to that dangle with Yellow. So I was thinking about like some of the older members of the Pokemon cast. Okay, hear me out on this one. I feel like Eric Stewart, aka the voice of Brock and James and Kaiba and like a whole bunch of things, I feel like, yeah, sure, you could get him to read for Brock and all that stuff, but I feel like he would do a really good job at Lance with the Yellow Arc.
I've got J. Michael Tatum as Lance.
Okay.
He plays the villainous character NL in One Piece. Because he's got this very kind of deep, booming cockiness to him. He's used to playing a villain whose whole deal is wanting to just raise everything and start his own new world. So
I was thinking with the other characters, with the gym leaders and whatnot, I would be eager to hear the same cast as in the anime, except just different takes than they are. I would like to just see the comparison of how they work with this material.
Yeah, so like Rachel Lillis is Misty, Eric Stewart is Brock. The other voice actors that they brought in for that were less frequent.
See, I went the opposite direction. It's like, instead of one of the typical voices for Oak, I was like, Pro ZD, just give a different vibe. Just
oh my god, that would be
really deep voiced Oak.
Someone could be interesting. Yeah. Or John Eric Bentley.
I should probably, he doesn't like that. Sung Wong Show. I'll say his actual name. I don't think he likes being associated with just being a YouTuber.
Yeah. And also live action actor. He's in that Blackberry movie. But I just kind of imagine Professor Oak being given like a very deep voice in this version.
And then, because he can play entertaining villain voices of a variety, I put Matthew Mercer as, I wrote Winston here, Price.
Oh my... Yeah, I could see that. Or Giovanni.
Yeah.
I changed my mind. Cast me as Green or Erica.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. We gotta throw John DiMaggio somewhere in here. Like, that dude's in everything.
He could be the Pokeball Maker guy?
Kurt,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, Fisherman Ralph.
Fisherman Ralph.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got Misty Brina Palencia, who's Chopper's actual voice in One Piece, is dub, because Brina Palencia also plays Juvia, who is a water-based character. That is the only reason I put her here. I was getting a bit lazy.
You know what? I was wondering about a voice actor for Crystal, but I will put our friend from Worlds Elsewhere Theatre Company, Laura Crone, as her.
Nice. Oh, I didn't know she was in... that's cool. I like her video essays.
Oh, yeah. Laura's great. Shout out to Laura.
Yeah, shout out to a video essay on Last Night in Soho. That one really nicely untangles my very complicated feelings on that movie. Whitney, I've got Monica Riol, who voices Mira Jane in Fairy Tail and a bunch more notable things. I think she was Patty in Soul Eater. Hoven from the past, you absolute plum duff. She didn't voice Patty, she voiced Tsubaki. Completely different character. Patty was voiced by Jeremy Lay, who also plays a character in Fairy Tail. She plays Lucy. Hoven, you silly sausage. Giving me more work in the future. How dare you? She's been in loads. She's Uzaki and Uzaki-chan. She's been in loads, but yeah, she has that kind of bubbly, high-pitched kind of voice that would fit. And then my last kind of ancillary cast member is Bill, who I would cast Michael Lindsay, who plays Joe in Digimon, who is another very learned, nervous wreck of a character.
Ooh, actually, this is my Fire Emblem Awakening stanhood peeking in through. But yeah, no, Sam Riegel voices Donald, who does that Southern accent kind of thing, and I feel like that could translate very well to Bill, because they do try to make him a little bit of a Southerner.
That's the thing, I didn't even notice the Southern affect in this part of the manga.
Yeah, it feels like it's gone. It doesn't feel like it's there anymore.
Yeah, they kind of moved that away a little bit.
Oh, that's a shame. I love when regional accents are implemented.
Voice actors are great. All right, so let's see here. Wensleydale, I see on the agenda that you are eager to hear if I've checked out any of the post-Ash anime.
Oh yeah, I'd actually love to hear that, yeah.
I have not.
Oh.
Not out of a lack of interest. I will say, I've looked at least at some highlights with Rico's adventures and all that. I do like the fact that Captain Pikachu is around. I like Captain Pikachu as a character just because you get some variety in the... It's interesting to see a Pikachu be kind of different from the standard cutesy Pikachu that Ash's Pikachu is kind of characterized as.
Are you saying that this Pikachu is ornery? This is how Red described him in Mount Moon, but...
Yeah, no, I remember. That's a way to describe it. Yeah. I do also appreciate that they've given furry representation in this most recent anime.
I'm sorry, is there a Lopunny doing weird things or a God of War?
So, because there's a character in the most recent anime where basically the Rising Volt trackers, they're the crew of the Pokemon catching people that they're doing stuff with, and one of the characters that's featured is a, how do I describe this? They're always wearing a Nidorino outfit. They're named Nido Thing.
Okay.
It's a Pokemaniac.
Oh yeah, a Pokemaniac or a Super Nerd. I always mix up those two classes, but there was this one from the very beginning of the game that always dressed up as a Slowpoke.
Yeah, I mean, the story is that the real person is named Dot. She's a skilled programmer who is pretty averse for the different technological systems and created the Pokedex system, but she also just dresses up as Nido Thing for some reason.
Well, I guess you could expect that from the Warner sister.
That is a joke in Animaniacs of like, oh, what are you guys?
Yeah, that's the thing. The Nidoran line. Can you tell what it is? I thought that they were rabbits.
Yeah, I always thought they were rabbits, especially in the younger forms, and then they mutate into dinosaurs, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Dinosaur rabbit sounds good.
I just think dinosaurs because in the Safari Zone, they did the Jurassic Park pastiche with Nidoking.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
So have you checked out, meanwhile, the end of the Ash episodes? Because I guess this discussion will be a bit spoilery, but I'd be eager to hear what happened there.
I mean, the thing with that, it kind of just ended off not too dissimilar to pretty much every single other anime arc ends. It's pretty common that at the end of every sort of regional battle, like, oh, Ash and Pikachu, they split off from the main group and they're heading back to Pallet Town by themselves, and there's usually one solo match with Team Rocket, and then it's time, we're going back home, Pikachu, and freeze frame, and thus concluded Ash's journey. In terms of a end to the character, I think that I enjoyed the fact that there was some elements of callbacks. Like, they had a couple of things where they would bring back Pidgeotto, Butterfree briefly came back. They were just pulling up all the fan service. And the bigger thing, though, for me, was seeing the way that they chose to end off Team Rocket.
How did they do that?
So in the episode Ash and Latias, the trio does decide to eventually return to Team Rocket HQ by themselves because they're vowing to become legends of their own, where they would try and pursue their own little different goals and stuff. But for reasons, they find themselves stuck in cafeteria duty back at Team Rocket headquarters, so they decide, you know what? Let's go back to finding Pikachu.
That's kind of perfect for them, but at the same time,
Yeah. I don't know. If you're familiar with, there's this artist, Kiana May, who has made some excellent art that ships Ash Ketchum's mom and Jessie.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I've seen this.
It's adorable. That's the headcanon I want to go out on. Jessie, she decides, yeah, I'm done doing the Team Rocket thing. I'm gonna go become a nurse, like she always dreamed of doing, and Delia Ketchum is being supportive of her, and And then they get together, and it's very cute. Highly recommend. That's my plug. Go look at Kiana May's art.
Yeah. It's always been kind of strange for me because the tie-in books always describe Jesse and James as teenagers. So I always kind of saw them as that for me, but I guess it was always very vague as to what ages they are. They're like 24 and 25, actually, right?
Well, no, Delia is technically 29 years old, and Jesse's 25.
Okay.
But those are my main anime thoughts. I need to watch more of Pokemon Horizons is like the new series. Oh, also, people are really getting thirsty over Freedy, the owner of Captain Pikachu.
A great successor to all the hot Pokemon professors we mentioned in the first episode. Anyway, Delia and Jessie ship teasing, much better than Eugene and Crystal ship teasing. Anyway. That is going to do it for the third proper episode of Podcastmon Adventures. You can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Now I've got a link tree, so I'm going to link it. linktr.ee/Wensleydale Cheddar is where all the links are. Patreon.com/Wensleydale Cheddar is what helps us pay the bills, so if you want us to devote more time to making the show better, consider supporting us there. In return, you can get your name in the YouTube credits or get access to some bonus content. For example, I'm recording a Nuzlocke of Pokemon Cell Silver with Spinning Asha. We've got a backlog of over 90 episodes now, so it's plenty of humorous content you can access for just $1 a month.
And if you enjoyed our discussion of the dubious incest of Green and and Silver, well, there is a Krabby called Pincest. Is it a Krabby?
Yeah, it's a Kingler now, but yeah.
Kingler, yeah.
Pincest has become the mainstay of the teams. I love her.
Breaking news from the future. I repeat, breaking news. The Stamper Nuzlocke for Pokemon Soul Silver has been completed. You can get all of the episodes on Wensleydale's Patreon. Check it out now. It rules.
Oh no.
So the first episode should be available to the general public, so come check it out and help me reach more ambitious goals like making a special episode on the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, or a video about Poland as a hypothetical Pokemon region. Now, one more note on the Nuzlocke and this arc. You've noticed, Hoven, that there is a panel like Gold calling Silver his favorite bystander. We named Silver Bystand in our playthrough.
Simply a marvelous name.
Remember that much like the crack between time, the YouTube algorithm is a dark abyss of sorrows and woes from which channels like these never resurface, and what helps us navigate it is liking, subscribing, and sharing the podcast with a friend. On my YouTube channel, you can get access to my manga video essays and Duckface Diaries, a retrospective podcast where Hoven and I cover the cult sci-fi manga World Trigger volume by volume. Henry, where can people find you?
You can find me so many places. The main two places I'm plugging because damn the Dread Bird app are youtube.com/Henry Kathman with my different series of video essays. My most viewed videos are about different pieces of animation and stuff like that, but I like to branch out and talk about all kinds of different topics. Presently, the video that I'm working on right now, which should hopefully be released by the time this episode comes out, is my video discussing the 2013 Baz Luhrmann adaptation of The Great Gatsby, and turns out I had a lot of feelings about that particular story, and that thing's an hour long, so check that thing out. But also, all the other things that I do are compiled on my Tumblr page, henrykathman.tumblr.com, which has all my podcasts, videos, all the other kinds of stuff that I do that are just in those places. So check those things out if you're so inclined. But speaking of podcasts, I am the co-host of the Pink Owl Podcast, which is our retrospective podcast that discusses different adaptations of doll-centric media, particularly Barbie, Monster High, Bratz, all those kinds of things. Now, at this point, we've probably had an episode about the Margot Robbie Barbie movie that has dropped, and you can give that a listen to. But presently, a series that I'm very much proud of is Behind the Barbie, the Ruth Handler story, which is a little 3-part historical retrospective series we did on Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie, that I had a lot of fun writing that and researching that, and I'd love it if you give it a listen. And just like Wensleydale, I also got a Patreon, patreon.com/Henry Kathman. You can support my stuff there. And I got some exclusive kind of stuff that is out and about. So, yeah, always a good time.
All right, and also definitely check out the episode about the Moomins, because more people need to know about the Moomins.
Yes, so many people need to know about Moomin.
Hoven, where can people find you?
You can find me at youtube.com at the channel Hoven with an H, where I have the currently defunct podcast series, Hoven's Hideaway, where we talk about all sorts. Did you enjoy our discussion about the dubious, incestuous nature of Green and Silver's relationship in shipping terms?
Starting to notice a theme.
And how we related that to the Promised Neverland. You can listen to our discussion of the Promised Neverland. We thought that property fell off before it was cool. And there was also discussion of dubious incestuous stuff in our episode of Ending of Food Wars, which it was the first episode of that podcast, so you can give that a watch too. I'm at Dreaded Bird at Hoven with an H. I'm still there. I'm going down with that burning, toxic ship. You can't stop me.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying, Tumblr is pretty chill.
I will eventually make a Mastodon or something along those lines. I don't know. Mastodon seems to be the most lefty one. I have no idea, but I will make one eventually. But in the meantime, follow us on Twitter at Podcastmon Manga. My individual Twitter is at Cheddar, and you've mentioned yours, and the Pink Isle Pod is at Pink Isle Pod, and Duckface Iris, the World Trigger Podcast, is at Duckface Iris.
My god, there's a lot of these. I am sorry this episode has taken so long. I wish it had taken less time, but here we are. A couple of things. One, Wensleydale and I are both on Blue Sky now. Pretty sure you could find Wensleydale from the link tree. I'm Hoven with an H on Blue Sky. If you're not on there yet, I have codes. So please hit me up. Drop me a DM on, ironically enough, the Wretched Bird app. I will provide you a code to join us on Blue Sky. Also, before I forget, if you enjoyed the various covers of Pokemon music that we used to introduce each of the sections throughout the episode, check out Zame on YouTube. They very kindly agreed to let us use their music when we reached out to them. So check out Zame. Their covers are awesome, and we will be using them more going forward on future episodes. So yeah, back to the show.
If you're lost with all those links, go ahead and check out my link tree. Once again, you can find all the links to both my work, Hoven's work, Henry's work, all of the people who have collaborated with me. Link tr.ee/Wensleydale Cheddar. Send us emails, questions, comments, suggestions at wensleydale013@gmail.com or on the Dreaded Bird app once again. And now, Hoven, it is time for predictions for the Ruby and Sapphire arc. Now this time, I need to specify this will be only Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, not Emerald.
So first of all, let's go with length. So the time frame of Gold, Silver, and Crystal was exactly 3 years, and we had 90 chapters. I know that there's a Fire Red and a Leaf Green arc. So, I think the manga will finish a little ways after the Fire Red and Leaf Green games come out. So that gives us 1 year and 2 months. So that's a little under half of what Gold, Silver, and Crystal had. So my prediction for Ruby and Sapphire's length is about 35 chapters.
Okay.
35? Yeah, nah, this sucker is 87 rounds, so not as long.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, not as long as Gold and Silver, although considering the Emerald arc, I don't know if you want to predict how long that thing's gonna be.
Let's cross that bridge when we come to it, shall we?
Fair enough.
Oh, I'm so happy to learn that. I was worried my baby Hoenn was gonna get short-shrifted.
Oh no, much like the anime, they get their mileage out of Hoenn.
Okay.
Some might criticize and say too much mileage out of Hoenn.
Oh, you can never get too much mileage out of Hoenn.
Well, you know, there's all that water, so...
I think a big emphasis will be put on the conflict between Team Aqua and Magma, like with the games. Rival bad guy teams were a big selling point of Gen 3, and it's not something we've really seen tackled in Adventure yet. It's only really, former bad guys turning face to help the good guys. I also think one of the Dex holders will be really into the Pokemon contests, as that's a new feature with the Lily Cove City's contest hall.
Okay.
At some point, they're going to use a secret base as a hiding spot to avoid perilous danger, because that feels like a cool dynamic where you can use the secret bases. It's like, oh no! This Camerupt's on the rampage! It's gonna cover us in lava! Oh, what? We dumped hacked into this wall and there's just a room here? And then one of the characters is like, hey, see, you found my secret base. So there's a scene.
Okay.
Then I think this arc will be relatively light on established dex holders, since Gen 3 relied a lot less on callbacks to the prior games than Johto did with Kanto. Obviously, the foreshadowing in Gold, Silver, and Crystal does indicate that Crystal will be involved with that. Kyogre and Groudon will still... Maya linked camera up to Solar Pokemon fusion called Corrupt. It's very cursed. Kyogre and Groudon will still be grumpy as shit and hate each other's guts, though I think the actual plot that unfolds around the two of them will be very different from that of the games. As far as the dex holders go, I don't think either Ruby nor Sapphire will end up superseding the other as the quote-unquote main dex holder, the way that Gold debatably did with Crystal, because Gold does ultimately start the part off and be the key to resolving the conflicts at the end. Because from this gen onwards, Pokemon really leans into marketing the girl player character just as much as the boy one. It's like May and Dawn both got to be Ash's companions in the anime, and the like, and I think that'll be reflected here. I am curious to see if they'll use an OC as the trainer for the third Pokemon starter, or an existing game character like Wally. My guess is that the boy player trainer will get a Mudkip to round off the pattern of grass with red, fire with gold, and then we get to water. But Mudkip also kind of seems like it would be the best fit, just vibes-wise, for Wally if he was a third dex holder. So, I don't know, on that front.
Okay. Well, of the two dex holders, who do you think's gonna be into the contest stuff?
Gonna be stereotypical, and I think it's the girl trainer, the May equivalent.
I mean, yeah, that would stick with the anime.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that when I guess a lot of stuff we're watching together ahead of time, you say a specific phrase then to me. I guess we'll see. So I guess I will respond to you here. I guess we shall see.
You don't need the Celebi to tell in the future.
If you've already read.
Yeah.
I do think, going forward, in general, I think these big ensemble pieces like this arc should be treated like Doctor Who Anniversary multi-Doctor specials. Like, kind of sparing, so that the impact is able to sink in some more and allow for a bit more of an ebb and flow between arcs. Like, you can have, like, some legacy characters in there, but I don't think all of them need to be in all of them. You can pull back a bit.
Okay, well, it's definitely an interesting perspective of what you're introducing here into this dynamic.
Yeah.
See, now that you've mentioned that it's 87 chapters, I'm not sure anymore.
I think every single one of those predictions was 100% correct.
Oh my god.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I think none of it was. But what does it matter? In the end, how about we all podcast together?
Yeah!
So, this was our third episode of Podcastmon Adventures, and as always, it looks like we're blasting off again!
Ding!